To move, so I make it harder.
Michelin fights waste by developing tires made to last, so you can use them for longer.
World time has come to
Michelin, motion for life.
Today, the virtual revolution comes to a close, and it does so here at the World Center of Racing. At the start of January, the GTP evolution will begin, but today we crown your 2022 IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship champions here at the Daytona International Speedway. Hello everyone, welcome along to VCO Esports RaceSpot TV and the iRacing Esports Network for the final 2 hours and 40 minutes as we race through the sunrise for the final round of the championship. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, joined alongside, as ever, by Lewis McLeod. And Lewis, 2 hours and 40 minutes, Daytona, drafting, bump drafting. We're in for some craziness to round things off.
Oh, I mean, you couldn't pick a better circuit to end a championship on. Either end one or open one somewhere like this. I mean, it's just a fantastic track. It's brutal when it comes to its slipstream, its ability to race. You've got to be on your tippy toes all the way through the 2 hours and 40 minutes. I still don't think we're going to see a safety car out in action today, but I think we're going to see a lot of action.
I do tend to agree with you now that I am getting ready to go racing. Likely 2 hours and 40 minutes of green flag running, and it means you're going to be in the draft, you're going to be pushing through traffic, and I think it's going to be somewhat of a messy affair for maybe a few of our drivers. Let's look at the journey that we've been on as we get ready to round things out. We started, of course, at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta just a few weeks after the Motul Petit Le Mans, headed over to the left coast of the USA before previewing the battle on the bricks, and now, of course, ending things off at the Daytona International Speedway. Qualifying just got underway with 10 minutes on the board, drivers getting 4 laps and the tracks to themselves, and then the race gets underway at about 2 p.m. Eastern, 18 minutes from now. We talked about the unlikelihood of safety cars, Lewis, but there's still a factor that drivers and teams will be thinking about, and they can't be too naughty. Race control is there to slap them on the wrists.
Yep, as much as I say, we think the likelihood is low. That is not impossible. Of course, we have seen a couple out in action. That was both back at Laguna Seca. What can we see here? Very much a high level of potential. I think that live race control factor, that is going to be very, very important today. We've got a lot of cars out there on what is not a particularly long lap. We know that traffic's going to play a big part of it, of course, between the GTDs and the touring cars, as we've seen all season. But the speed differential around here when it comes to that top speed is going to be absolutely monstrous, especially with that run through the bus stop chicane.
I'm just a little bit nervous about that one. Let's look at the championship standings. Like Lewis mentioned, 2 classes, GTD and touring cars. Of course, GTD made up with 6 manufacturers, Porsche running 1 and 2 at the front, represented by the Apex Racing team. And while the number 98 is looking, I think, somewhat comfortable to claim the championship here, Lewis, the battle for second is going to be right down to the wire. 3 points separate the 97 that took victory at Indianapolis from BS Turner in their split liveries, number 96.
Yeah, the 97 didn't start off the season with the greatest result. Actually finished right the way down the order after having some problems late on. Alas, this is their chance to jump back in, to move their way back up into that top spot, second spot rather, to keep up with the teammates, to make it an Apex Racing team 1-2 in the standings. But BS Turner are definitely a team that I would not count out. And to be fair, let's be honest, Apex will know that more so than anyone else. And to be fair, the fights behind that 4th, 5th and 6th also pretty close between the Mercedes AMG duo, 1 Urano and 1 Williams Esports, along with Team 7. Of course, we will talk about that a little bit later on.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that story indeed. Let's talk about touring cars very quickly then. 6 manufacturers in the GTDs, just Honda and Hyundai in this touring car class. They are both represented by 7 cars. It's SimRC and the Bumblebee for Hyundai that is leading, but RAG and that Honda have shown pace. Apex have always shown speed. Of course, they missed qualifying at the start of the season. That put them on the back foot. A 3-car fight in this championship, although I do think for the Apex Racing team, they need trouble to strike those front 2 to really be in with a chance.
Yeah, and realistically, at the moment, I would say SimRC have been the faster of all of the teams throughout the season. Of course, they were lumped with that penalty back at Road Atlanta, which it was Road Atlanta, wasn't it? That dropped them down the order a little bit. And sure, that was one bit of drama that kind of pushed them just a touch out, but they've got the speed. They've had 2 victories this season, and it's what's thrown them back up into the title race, into the challenge and into the lead of the championship.
It's a very interesting championship situation in this touring car, and we call these cars sometimes totally chaotic racing cars. Very intrigued as to how this will play out. Those that watched the iRacing Raw before earlier in January will know exactly how crazy things can be. We had a massive pile-up on the banking coming back down to that main straightaway. So the car's working in qualifying. 10 minutes, like we said, 4 laps to themselves as they roll around this Daytona International Speedway. But in this final round of the championship, we wanted to talk a little bit more about those behind the scenes that have made this happen. The IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship has partnered up with VCO to enter into the sim racing world. I sat down with Florian Hasper to learn a little bit more. We're joined now by the CEO of the VCO, Florian Hasper, who's been working behind the scenes to make this partnership a reality. And Florian, it's been a long year to get to this point after you and I had a conversation about this IMSA E-Series in 2021, but the season's coming to an end. How do you look back on the 3 races that we've had and the 2 hours and 40 minutes still in front of us?
Oh, well, hi Arjuna, hi everyone at home. I mean, it's, this season was long in the making. At least the general idea, as you mentioned, to us, I must say it's a dream come true. It was a dream come true that like IMSA decided to do a, let's say, all-in sim racing series, and then talk to us. How could we make it happen, and so on. It was a big honor for us. And now we're at the end of the season, which has been yeah, a lot of work, a lot of effort, especially from you, Arjuna. Yeah, so big thanks for all the time that you've spent. But also a huge thank you to the IMSA guys, John Doon and Max Roja, everyone who supported us there or who really put a lot of effort into the series. Also to the partners, or to Michelin as the main partner, as the big supporter of esports in general, and also of sim racing, of course. So it was a great package that we put together. And a huge thanks to the drivers and teams, because the goal from IMSA and from VCO was to offer a series where the best teams and the best drivers of the planet meet, and this worked out. I think in the end we learned a lot over the 3 races, and then also for the final today. There is a lot to improve, but also I think that the races delivered some great action, some really top level esports racing. So I think it was a great first season, and definitely something to build on if IMSA wants next year. Let's see. But yeah, it was good fun, and everyone involved at VCO had a blast there.
One of the main missions at VCO is to bring the best sim racers together in esports racing. You've had a busy 2022. What do sim racing fans have to look forward to from VCO, with still a month and a half left to go in this year, and then the rest of 2023 lying in store?
I mean, sometimes I wonder, why are we doing all this? Because we are just putting so much things into the winter period now, or in the coming weeks. But we are sort of addicts. Yeah, we are really fascinated by esports racing and sim racing. So so we cannot do it differently. So I mean, there's VCO Pro Sim Infinity coming up, which is a huge thing for us. On iRacing, it's a great format on 9th and 10th December. So it's like 24 races in 24 hours, which is a bit of it's a crazy thing. We did Infinity in May already, and it was surprisingly, well received, and so much action and fun. So this is a very entertaining format with fixed setups, but also the entry list is just crazy. Yeah, all big teams are there, and it will be a really fun event to watch. Then we also have this multi-platform approach. So we are not just focusing on iRacing. We also do a series on Assetto Corsa Competizioni, for instance, which is called Flex Stream. Yeah, Flex Stream is starting next week. Or next weekend, with a semi-endurance race on 9 hours, which has so many innovative elements in it, like how to determine the BOP and so on. So we did a draft show for that. So it's a very exciting project with many new ideas. And we have the Simi Awards. There's a voting phase going on. So where we will hand out 11 wonderful Simi trophies again on 26th of December. And we are getting ready for the big ERL Esports Racing League final, which will happen in February, the Esports Racing World Cup in Hamburg, which is our live event, our first ever VCO live event, and I cannot wait for it. But it's a lot of work in the build up, and then we will meet at Arcadia, which is an esports facility, the home of the Unicorns of Love in Hamburg, and I cannot wait for this.
It's going to be a lot of fun as people from all around the world will come together to race in person. Thanks for joining us, Florian. Thanks for all the help to put together this IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship. Let's head back to our pre-show. Qualifying is over. Drivers get a few moments to get themselves ready to go racing before 2 hours and 40 minutes will commence. You'll notice that the weather conditions have changed slightly since the last time we saw some on-track pictures. It will change once again before we go racing. Let's talk a little bit, though, Lewis, about this Daytona International Speedway. Of course, we use almost all 2.5 miles of the banking. Let's ride around with the pole lap for Alejandro Sanchez as the championship leaders look to secure the championship.
Yeah, indeed. Into that first corner. Getting it slowed down brilliantly. Alejandro Sanchez well in control of this car. Coming up towards the third corner at the International Horseshoe. Tricky braking zone here. You're braking deep into the corner before you hook up that apex. Drives off the corner and brilliantly puts the power down up towards the dog leg. This will be a big, brave moment for you before you get into the West Horseshoe. But I don't know about you, Arjun, this is looking pretty clean right now. A very tidy lap thus far. Onto the brakes nicely into that tricky braking zone again. Very bumpy in there. We're getting it all sorted.
Yeah, the two hairpins are, of course, different directions, but they're very different in terms of the way the corners play out. This is the crucial, though, run out back onto the banking and almost all 2.5 miles of it. And Sanchez uses a lot of the runoff to just carry that momentum before diving down all the way to the yellow line, minimizing the distance and running himself around turns 1 and 2 on the oval. Now, of course, this one opportunity to breathe, talk to your teammates, grab a drink of water. In qualifying, maybe. However, in the race, traffic is going to be all around, and the closing speeds into the bus stop will be scary with the touring cars. Spot the braking zone on the right and hammer the curbs all the way through. Being careful on the left, Sanchez sliding the rear end out, but still being able to carry plenty of speed through the corner. And now back through the banking, Lewis, to finish up the lap.
Yeah, beautiful lap. All that's to be dealt with now is going up through the gears cleanly, crossing the line, banking a 1 minute 42.179 to take the final pole position of the season, even going below the double yellow as he'd cross over it. I think this will be the only time that we'll see anyone going below the double yellow today. At least that's what the ruling suggests. So we'll see about that one. Alejandro Sanchez, though, great lap time, lovely and clean. And when it comes to it, again, pole over the teammate by just 200ths of a second.
The margins are going to be tight here. I mean, we saw this in the iRacing 24 Hours of Daytona, and let's celebrate that, by the way. Over 16,000 drivers were able to experience the thrill of a 24-hour race, courtesy of the iRacing special event. Next year's iRacing Daytona 24, though, will be just a little bit more special, of course, as IMSA enters the GTP Evolution. Oh, next year is shaping up to be something, that is for sure. And it's not just going to be special out there in the real world at the World Center of Racing, but come next January, all signs appear as though iRacing enters the GTP era as well. BMW will be bringing its LMDH car to the platform. And Lewis, I know we are all excited about this, announced at BMW Sim Live just a handful of weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a BMW, obviously notified by those enormous nostrils at the front of it, but it looks aggressive, it looks racy, and it is the future of sports car racing. It's something that we all behind the scenes cannot wait to get our hands on. I know so many drivers out there are desperate to get involved. If we do get it, January time, I think we'll see potentially again another record-breaking Daytona 24 on the iRacing service, but also I think we're going to see most people jumping into that category, because who doesn't want to do a 24-hour race in that car? I mean, it looks so good.
I will say, you and I, we've had our conversations about the front end of the BMW M4. That is a car that I love everything about it. The Porsche looks all of them look spectacular.
All look great.
Yeah, no, I can't say that any one in particular does not look spectacular, and I'm hoping that we maybe get some more to add to the party. Looking forward to 2023. I'm hoping IMSA Esports enters the GTP era as well. Quickly before we get started then, let's bring in our pit reporter. Ewan O'Leary has been working alongside Lorenzo Bonder and DJ Clark over the course of the previous 3 rounds. He's joined by Lorenzo once more down there to talk us through all the actions. And Ewan, let's talk about our Michelin's key to victory here in the season finale. Of course, it's not just about the championship. There are teams that will want to wrap this up with a victory.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be kind of 2 races, I guess you could say, with the keys to the race here with regards to the championship and the race. First of all, the draft. So important around here at Daytona. This race could well stay together between a lot of cars for a really long time here today. It could well even be a race to the line. We'll wait and see on that. But you've got to be careful. You've got to be smart in your racecraft and your drafting games. You've got to be very, very smart indeed. And that is how you're going to end up winning the race. Bump drafting as well going to be a big talking point. Do you want to take that risk or not? I get the feeling that most of these teams will do. And of course the tyre strategy as well. We've seen very much a consensus as to what the teams want to go for so far this season. The same thing has been done pretty much every round. Are we going to see that again, or is it going to be same, or are we going to see something different, I should say?
I'm looking forward to something exciting. We are ready to go, though, here at the World Center of Racing. 2 champions to be crowned and a championship leader starting at the front. Alejandro Sanchez will bring us to the green with the Apex Racing team number 98, but it's a front row lockout for the Corby crew. Johan Hart will be alongside. Rainer Talvar needs to fight that 92nd for second in the championship, while Oskari Rene, of course, for Team 77 will line up on the outside of row number 2. Ryan Barneveld 1,000th behind Rene in 5th for the BMW BS competition team. Daniel Pastor, the best of the Mercedes, on the outside of row 3. Salva Talons for MSI along with Gianni Vecchio, while Beneke and Jamie Moon round out the top 10. Carl Jensen, Sven Haase in the returning Biela Racing Euronics car share row number 6. It's Dylan Shrivens in for the final round of the championship in place of Nicholas Laubish, who lines up alongside Manu Rayo Lago. It's Luca Kita and Dominic Blyer, 15th and 16th spots as Blyer jumps into the McLaren. Altus Esports in a Lamborghini and a McLaren share row 9. Iglesias and Razag will bring us to the start of this race, while bookending the top 10, Sean Campbell in the hardpoint by Delta Sport number 99 sees Matti Sieppula in the number 7 BMW that's usually towards the front. On the edge of the top 20, Nicholas Rubelar, Alexander Davison for Arnage and Pearsons, 21st and 22nd. Jonas Wanner again replacing Moritz Lohner, now an official Door Esports driver though in 23rd. Dion Fiallo for Company on row 12. James Armstrong for Brabham in their McLaren with Gonzalo Vergara for Maniti in 26. Michel Rack and then Elias Riker, 27th and 28th. Arturo Melgar has a penalty to serve at the start of this race. Elects to stay out of trouble come the start. Nicole Foggy knows he's got it all to do in the championship fight and puts it on pole, but by the slimmest of margins. It's the Bumblebees of Corentin Gunes and Kieran Harrison, half a 10th off the pace, that will line up alongside Yaroslav Sabula for Semper Racing, the best qualifying we've seen for them, along with Steen Ledger, the first of the Hondas. Then Florian Lebigra in the 108 RAG. He's got Martin van Lozenoord to work with here today on row 3. Robin Munster in the Impulse 122 has Naveed Hussein sharing row 4. Alex Torres inside the top 10, along with Pascal Stix, who jumps from a GT4 car to a touring car here today. Carl Stiges, Scott Michaels 11th and 12th, while the 2 final drivers, Carl Whitmer in the official Honda Racing entry sees Gergo Baldi for Company, another driver and a team that will have a penalty at the start of the race. So a look top to bottom at our running order, and of course as we look at the championship leader and we look at those cool weather conditions that will only warm up as we race through the morning, it's an easy situation for the number 98 here, Lewis. Finish 18th spots and they win the championship.
Yeah, it should be an easy run for them, but you know you want to end a season like this in style, and if I'm perfectly honest, the 98, they've been so good throughout this season. I can't see anyone else really being able to beat them. Maybe, obviously, their teammates in the 97 alongside them that front row, but outside of those, I don't know. BS Turner, though, they're focused not only on the race itself, but also grabbing second in the championship. They'll be focused purely on that 97 and how they can beat them.
An interesting complexion at the front of the field. Again, we do see that Team 77 Ferrari qualifying well. The question is, can they carry that forward into the race? Because they didn't so much at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Of course, split class start, so the touring cars will fall slightly behind as we get underway. And of course, those track conditions will get warmer from here. Be bold with tire strategy and be bold now. Those Michelins take time to change. Spend as little time in pit lane as possible. Pace car exits stage left. Hopefully the only time we see it today, and into the starting zone we go to round out the 2022 IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship. The Corby crew single file themselves out, and Team 77 looks to the outside into turn number 1. A tidy start for the GTD field as 29 of them funnel down into the braking zone. 1, 2, 3, and 4 now are single filed, but it's back in the pack where 2 by 2 they work into the International Horseshoe, Lewis.
Yeah, we expect them to remain side by side at least until the exit of here. It's probably a couple still going side by side through the dog leg. At the moment, all is well and good, but there is a bit of spinning in the background. I guess that is pretty much the expectation, isn't it?
Here come the touring cars, though, and again, Apex convert pole to the lead of this race. SimRC just need a top 2 to guarantee the championship, and they will hold that spot for the time being. Semper Racing losing out to the Pure Sims Honda as they funnel through the flip-flop chicane into the International Horseshoe. GTDs, though, meanwhile, running back onto the banking and now building up that momentum into the bus stop chicane.
Yeah, those two GTDs that had the problems. It was the Team 7 car, Matti Siepeler, the BMW M4 that they've got, as well as Alexander Davidson and the Pure Sims Esports GTD that were having the problems going into the International Horseshoe. So we'll have to keep an eye on what they can recover to. But at the moment, Apex, they are taking control of this race. Of course, there's not going to be any fighting between those as we head into the bus stop. Of course, the Le Mans chicane. They'll race their way through. And at the moment, they are starting to pull away already from BS Turner. But let's be honest, that gap is probably going to come down to Slipstream is going to play a massive part of this, but they're already going to start bump drafting.
It's still the bus stop chicane in my heart, by the way.
True.
It will always live on. Now, Johan Hart did tell me, by the way, this was the plan. If they were 1 and 2, they could find 3 or maybe 4/10 of a second per lap. If they're allowed to break away, it will be a dangerous proposition. You cannot allow those two to control the tempo of this race. Of course, draft will play a factor. Got Reina Tauber, Oscari Rene in those BMWs and Ferraris behind, still very much within touching distance, however. We'll still definitely have to be careful. Door Esports, one of those teams as well that does have a penalty for requiring an extra Joker driver over the course of the season. They are serving that penalty now. There will be a handful more of them to work through in the opening stages of this race. And once we start dealing with traffic, Lewis, we talked about how different it's going to be with the pace differential into that Le Mans chicane. It is going to be scary, but it is going to be constant once we start to deal with it as we ride on board with Dylan Becky Shrivens.
Yeah, he's giving it a good go, isn't he? As Dylan Scrivens here at the moment. He's on the back end of Salva Talent, who I think has dropped back a few positions over the beginning portion of this race. Scrivens going forward just a touch in the Mercedes AMG team, Urano Esports. He's got his teammate of Luca Keita a couple of cars ahead. So potentially they might actually end up working together to guide the Slipstream up and down the track so that it sees fit for Scrivens to actually work up the position also. And of course, a bit of pressure from behind. But look at the bump drafting. They've been practicing. It is a risky game, though, isn't it? You're almost asking for trouble. They'll practice it time and time again, but still, sometimes you can get a couple of gremlins from doing the bump drafting, and sometimes it might just bite you that little bit too much. At the moment, things are looking good. BS Turner keeping up right now, as is the Team 77 car of Oscari Rene, as, to be honest, is the BMW Team BS competition car behind. They're all kind of staying in this train. But it's just about how long. Are they going to start splintering?
I think the first pass-through on traffic is going to be when it likely splinters out. It's typically what you see, and it's why you do want to be towards the front of the field in that first cycle through, because once the packs will build, it will be from there. We talked about tire strategy, but at a place like Daytona, Lewis, fuel strategy is equally important.
Yeah, and like I say, you want to... Well, I don't know about tyre strategy being too bad around here. Fuel strategy 100% is key. You're on throttle so much around here. The more slipstream you get, the more that you can back off, you breathe the throttle a little bit more, the more that you're going to be in a prime position later on. I think one thing that we just saw there as the R8G was coming through the bus stop. One thing they do have to be very mindful through there is exceeding track limits too much. This is what happened to the Team 7 car, and you'll see them just slide back onto the circuit. There was also that awkward spin from the Pure Sims car coming through there, but it seemed, at least from my eye, to be a pretty solo affair for the Team 7 car. Just kind of, they're probably focusing more on the pack rather than what they were doing.
Yeah, just, I think, one of those start incidents as well. The 108 has jumped in front of Semper Racing, by the way, in the touring car class, as they try and do what they can to close up on that 176. We kind of talked about this pre-race before we went live, but the reality is with 14 cars in the touring car class, it was always going to be difficult for those behind. SimRC basically just had to finish the race in a decent spot to give themselves a chance, and of course there are qualifying points to speak of as well. Team 77 have gotten in front of the 96. BS Turner are dropping backwards. Do they have a slowdown penalty? Yes, they seem they might have got one out of the bus stop.
Yeah, I was literally just about to start talking about that when I was saying about those issues. I thought R8G might have been pretty close in the touring car category, but it's about those slowdown penalties going through the bus stop. Oh, see ya, wouldn't want to be ya, and he's gone for a bit of a spin. That one being Sven Harter in the Bieler Racing team car, trying to go around the outside and just completely losing grip on the rear end. It is pretty cold on the track surface, and so it is pretty slick, just in a little bit too fast, and the rear end said no thank you.
Let's head down to pit lane for the very first time, and let's check in with GTDs, first with Apex and then with Urano. Ewan O'Leary, there's already some chatter over the radio.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing Apex getting away from the field right now. I heard somebody, not sure who it was, but I heard somebody describe this current situation as absolutely perfect. So they're loving it right now. Urano, for the moment, Lorenzo Bonda has been down there listening in, and a bit of fuel calculations going on. Fuel going to be very important today, trying to stretch it as long as possible for now, and then see where you are later, see where that puts you out.
First of many times, I believe we are going to check in with the strategy and Ewan O'Leary today, because we have inclinations of what's going to happen, but only that driver radio is going to really be the telling factor. So Biela tries to send it around the outside, and it's just losing it by himself. He talked about cold track temperatures, but that Lamborghini is known for being a bit of a handful at the best of times.
Yeah, I wouldn't take it. Just purely based on the fact that I know I couldn't drive it. Obviously, they've got plenty of experience within the Lamborghini, but it is a tricky devil, and apparently on that occasion it was slightly too tricky. Bit of bump drafting happening here. Carl Janssen on the rear end of Max Benecke, and you can see the enormous gap up towards Rainer Talvar, who is way up ahead. A couple of switches up inside that top 5, top 10 category, because BS Competition getting their way past Team 77 and now up into third. Trying to get on with it just a touch. There's a 5-car train here that we're looking at in that battle for third, but we are getting into that dangerous point, Arjuna. The top 2, they've cleared away Apex Racing Team. They are taking control.
1.3 seconds the margin, not totally out of drafting range, but the 89 and the 77 might have to start thinking about the bump drafting themselves in order to close that gap, because once the gap is gone, it's going to take a safety car to bring it back in. And I think Lewis and myself are both somewhat on the same page that we don't expect it to be an issue. On board with Rainer Talvar, of course, in that BS Turner split livery, the one that, of course, at Sebring in 2021, Lewis, we saw running in the real world in a BMW M4 GT4.
Yeah, like I say, pretty cool to have that real world partnership between BS Turner and BS and Turner. Oof, that is a hard thing to say. Having seen that at Sebring, having seen it race out there in the real life, having that motorsport and sim racing partnership has been absolutely incredible. And like I say, to see it represented in the sim is all well and good. But they'll be, I'll say, focused on this race at the moment. They'll be pretty frustrated with how things have gone thus far. Obviously, starting and running up in that third position, looking for second in the championship, trying to challenge the number 97 Apex Racing team car. With that slowdown penalty, they've dropped right out of it and now slipping back to the rear end of this train. We're on board with Talvar, and there is the move up to the high side from Gianni Vecchio, clearing the Team 77 car that's being driven by Oscari Rene, and almost alongside the BS Competition as well.
I'm just saying let Gianni Vecchio get to the front of the field, because when it comes to BMW Esports, and whether it was the BMW Sim 120 or the BMW Sim GT Cup, Gianni Vecchio has won the season opener at Daytona for 3 years and counting. He just seems to find a way to grab success here in this car, and so I would not be shocked if Gianni Vecchio is maybe the one to work his way forward. You can see the manufacturers, by the way, on the left side of your screen. It's Porsche, BMW, Ferrari in the top 5 for GTD. Hyundai, Honda, Hyundai in your touring car. Say that one 5 times fast.
Well, that was I'm almost a little impressed. That was not bad.
Wow, I've impressed you.
Yeah, well, there's a first time. They're going through their first little bits of lap traffic. The Honda Racing HPD car of Whitmer that's just getting off. It's not had a great start to the race, but it's just getting offline. You'll see it coming through the top end of the oval as we head through NASCAR 1 and 2. And what that's telling me is that we're going to start seeing a few more bits of traffic. I think Core, which is the next one, are going through the bus stop now, and that is part of that major train, which Apex are just leaving the bus stop and just heading through that train. They might actually, genuinely, they might clear most of this train before they even get to turn 1. That would be pretty handy.
And you can just see the speed as well, right? The differential. Apex up above 260, 70 kilometers an hour. Your touring car still down at 240. The differential is somewhat scary. There's a look on board inside the Apex Racing Team facility. They will get through most of the field. Not all of the field, but that is ideal situation if you are Apex Racing team. Team Redline, by the way, in that number 70, Gianni Vecchio has slipped behind Oscari Rene once again. As just look how close it gets through the opening sector as the GTD leaders blow past the touring car leaders now.
Yeah, and take a photograph, bang. Apex 1, 2, and 3. Technically in that shot. Obviously, you got the touring cars there. Don't really want to mess over your teammate too much. But like I said, this is where the gaps are really going to happen when it comes to inside the top end of that GTD category. Whilst the top two have got through cleanly, that means that everyone behind has to work their way through bit by bit. And look at how scary this is coming up towards the West Horseshoe. GTD's kind of, I was going to say on the inside, but they're all kind of funneling their way through all over the place. Impulse squeezed out just a touch there. You can see the MSI car. Whoa, Urano having a bit of a moment in the middle of the pack.
Well, I don't know if that was an intentional send to the inside of Team 75, but they may have grabbed 2 in 1 as they'll get to the inside of the Williams Esports Razor car as well. This is why that first pass through is so dangerous, and it's why you want to be towards the front. But I tell you what, I don't know how Luca Kita got that car stopped in time. He's +6 on the day so far. It's usually the green front end that we expect to be charging forward on board with Jamie Moon into the chicane.
Yeah, that was very, very scary. Nearly got into contact with the Apex Racing team of Foggy. Of course, leading in the touring car category. Almost a brush between them as they were 3 wide. Probably unknowing to the 199 they were actually 3 wide at that point. So that first pass through of traffic, I think, I'd hope, has woken everyone up. You can't surely be half asleep at the wheel at this point. Now you've got to be wide awake. Now we'll have to see that happen quite a few more times. There is that Williams Esports Razor once again going on the attack and getting to the outside of the first corner.
Head down to Ewan O'Leary once again because we saw the send from the number 90. Now, the question, I think, is was there damage? Is there lingering impacts that Luca Kita is dealing with, Ewan O'Leary?
Yeah, he just reported over the radio that the steering feels a bit weird. It wasn't clear to me listening in whether there was contact or whether he's having some kind of technical right now, but based on what they said, he was almost kind of apologising to the team for making that dive. I mean, it totally wasn't his fault, by the way. It just all stacked up in front of him and didn't really have anywhere to go. But he was almost apologising to the team and those around him for what he did, even though it wasn't really his fault at all. So there may well have been contact there, but certainly something a little bit off down at Urano. We'll see how much it affects them.
We'll see exactly how hard Luca Kita will now be able to charge as he settles back into a rhythm. And we said traffic will be constant. It will get constant. It won't be initially. I will correct myself because commentators do tend to be wrong sometimes, unfortunately. Never wrong. It will be in that pit cycle, I think it's going to be the most dangerous. Semper Racing, by the way, have regained 4th for the time being in front of the Impulse 122 as we recheck in with your touring car competitors. It's a bit of a 5-car train that is starting to break away at the front. Nicole Foggy is trying to make it a 1-car train. He's not been able to totally take advantage of the traffic, and now the draft will lock them back into line.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, played his way through it very, very well, trying to just basically gap them as much as possible and hope they're going to fight. The thing is that R8G car that's being driven by Florian Avigra, you know it's not going to go on the attack here. If there's going to be any bump drafting in this top group, it'll be between SimRC and R8G. Whilst they are fighting over the title, they don't want Apex to run away too much, because as much as they are a very, very outside chance of the title, you don't want to let them run away too much. At the moment, Foggy is doing everything that they need to do, right, in that team to keep themselves in even the remotest of remote hunts. If you can just get out there and lead, if that's all you need to do, get out there, lead, win, focus on doing that, as they'll all scramble their way through the first corner. And you're absolutely right, back into one lovely 5-car train.
You can see the sun starting to peek its way up, by the way, as it plays out right now. Temper Racing under fire once more as Steen Ledger that will try and grab 4th. Saw Steen Ledger back in a touring car yesterday in the digital Nürburgring Endurance Series that Lewis and myself got to commentate on. Usually, we've seen him a bit more in the GTD machines, but good to see him back in the front wheel hunting grounds where he started to make his name for himself. And while they went side by side through the kink and Lewis got a little bit excited, they made that look quite calm.
They did. There was more than enough space given, which I think is the right thing to do. You know, 2 hours 24 minutes left to go. If there was 10 minutes left to go, there'd be slightly less room given, but it was more I was getting a little bit concerned that they might actually lose the slipstream of those ahead. They've got themselves sorted.
There's a look at the live points, and this, of course, includes qualifying points as well. Now, a perfect weekend would see you walk away with 385 points, 350 for a race victory, 35 for qualifying in the pole position. You see how big a swing it's going to take for SimRC to be able to be leapfrogged by either of the RHE or the Apex Racing teams. Pure Sims have been able to jump in front of the 188 RHE car that is, by the way, experiencing some technical issues, so they are trying to figure out exactly how they will be able to navigate their way through the rest of this race. Let's check in with your GTD live points if we can as well, because of course there's no major drama when it comes, I think, to first and second when they play right now, of course, with Apex 1 and 2 in the championship and on track. You notice that number 55 Mercedes-AMG Williams Esports car has jumped up into the top 5 as well, so there is still prize money on the line here, and the second Williams Esports Razor car is also up a couple of spots.
Yeah, obviously presently running in 7th position for the Mercedes-AMG Team Williams car and 9th position for the Williams Esports Razor right now, so there is decent pace coming from the Williams camp generally. But also the Mercedes-AMG Team Williams car, they do have a car directly ahead in the form of BS Turner. Of course, they're presently third in the points, under no real threat at the moment from the Urano car that's presently running in 10th place. I was going to say 9th, but I literally just said that the Williams race cars in there, so that was a good effort. But yeah, running at the moment in that 10th position, obviously 4th in the points, and also with that potential damage on. There's no real pressure on their shoulders that Urano's going to get involved in this anyway, so I'm kind of curious as to how many more positions they can make up in the opening stages. We are seeing big splits inside the GTDs at the moment.
Yeah, this is the peloton that's trying to chase them down. BMW BS competition, Team 77, and then Johnny Vecchio in that BMW, in that Team Redline BMW. Let's head back down to pit lane, because Ewan O'Leary had just been listening in to the touring cars and into the camp of Pure Sims, and I think it's a very salient question what they're kind of wondering on the radio there, Ewan.
Yeah, well, they're wondering as well what Nico Foggy is going to do in this race and just how long he's willing to lead that group around. He's basically towing them around Florida at the moment, and they're just wondering quite how long he's going to do that for because of the fuel games and the fuel strategy that we've been talking about all day long so far. To be honest, they're quite baffled. He's even done it for nearly 20 minutes now, so I would expect there to be some kind of moving over maybe at some point. Their only theory is the fact that he wants to keep a second group away, including Impulse Racing, Full Send Racing, and those guys. There's kind of a second group very similar to theirs, and they're wondering maybe he wants to keep those guys away, but they're really puzzled at the moment, really.
Still wondering what Gianni Vecchio needs a handbrake for in a GT3 machine, but I'm sure there is a reason for it as we focus in on the driver in P number 5. Gianni Vecchio has had 3 teammates over the course of the season, back behind the wheel with Luke Bennett, of course, for this final round of the championship. But he's been paired with Josh Thompson and Diogo Pinto, the 2022 Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup World Champion, in those first 2 rounds of the championship. Coming up on about 20 minutes in the books. I tell you what, it is starting to settle down somewhat here, and I say that knowing that as I say that, Lewis, it is going to get crazy. But why don't we bring in John Hindorf from the team at Radio Show Limited and IMSA Radio, so we can have a little bit of a chat about all things sim racing and all things IMSA as well, because 2023 will hopefully be a big year for both. John Hindorf is standing by. John, do we have you on the radio?
Of course you do. I'm always on the radio. You know that, Arjuna. How are you, fella?
I'm doing fantastic. Delighted to have you join us for a few minutes here so we can chat about a lot of things. Let's start by talking about sim racing. Of course, you've seen a lot of American endurance racing in various forms, but of course, sim racing has allowed so many more people to enjoy what racing is all about. Earlier this year, 16,000 people got to enjoy the iRacing 24 Hours of Daytona, and like you said, it doesn't matter what race you're in, every race matters.
And it does, and it gives the opportunity for greater participation. We'd all like to think that we could go out there and drive in IMSA or ELMS or the WEC. Now, I'm fortunate. I've had the opportunity to get my international FIA driver's license. So if somebody would like to offer me that drive, yes, I can go and do it. I've got the helmet, I've got the hands device, I've got all the equipment that would get me to it. But let's be honest, that's not going to happen to me anytime soon. And for 99.9% of people who are interested in sports car and endurance racing, it's not happening for them either. So for a fraction of the cost of getting your license, you can get a decent rig, you can go online with iRacing and take part in events. Now, if you get to the very highest level and some of the blue ribbon events that iRacing run, like this IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship that we're watching at the moment at the fabulous Daytona. And by the way, how well are Apex doing at the moment? First and second in GT Daytona and leading in the touring cars as well. Then great, absolutely fantastic. And frankly, if series aren't involved in some way, shape or form, and you and I have had this conversation. In fact, I'm wearing the top now, Arjuna. I'm wearing the Porsche Sports Car Together Fest. We had this discussion. If series aren't involved in esports now, quite frankly, they're missing out, and they're missing out on a huge potential part of their audience.
When it comes to what you've experienced as well, being part of the VCO Grand Slams and, you know, providing full uninterrupted commentary just like you do in the real world, a lot of the drivers have said it feels special for them to be able to hear your voice, a voice that they've heard for so long commentating on them. How much do you enjoy the different sort of an environment and the different sort of commentary that you can do in the sim world? Because you can get a lot of data in the real world thanks to the likes of Timing 71, but I always say that we are so privileged in the sim world because we can have all this data, but then infinite camera angles placed wherever we want, and this flexibility and creativity to do what we want to do as best as we can.
It really struck me on the first season of the Digital Nürburgring Langstrecke Series, where we had cameras everywhere around the Nordschleife, the North Loop. And when we went back to the real world, it was actually a culture shock because I couldn't understand why we couldn't see things. And in fairness to Nürburgring TV and to, it's still the VLN who run that, they've had helicopters up all of this year, so we've had more. So it has made a difference. I never change what I do. Sorry, I'm going to get distracted by this touring car battle that's going on at the moment down in the International Horse Show. I never change how I feel about racing. Whether the racing is real or virtual, the competition is real. The talent is right there, and you have to really respect the amount of time, effort that goes into going racing. Now, it's a different type of time and commitment and investment in full metal racing as it is to esports. But look, we've been around esports since before it was called esports. Sports Car GT was the first piece of virtual racing that I got involved with. We had an American Le Mans Series radio web team of 3 McLaren F1s. Stop laughing at the back there. It's absolutely true. And we've been involved with it since then. I think it's absolutely brilliant. As I say, I don't change what I do. I like to get to know the people who are racing, and when we can do that and we can meet them face to face, even better. And also the amount of data that comes through. I'm spoiled with what I'm looking at right now. I've got 4 screens up at the moment, so I can look at the analysis, I can look at what's going on thanks to T71 with how many yellow flags. We haven't had any yet because that's how it works in esports, but I can absolutely drill down everything, including the average lap times for everybody, and that is the sort of thing that I've got used to in esports, and now I expect that when I go to a track, and that actually is quite difficult. When we've been doing stuff remote during the long yellow, as the responsible adult calls it, we've been able to do that away from the track, perhaps with IMSA. We've had to find different ways to do things, to make things happen. You need to talk about what's going on the screen here, because this is a great battle.
It's the traffic that's coming through. Your two Apex
fabulous.
leaders are trying to insert themselves into a touring car train that now goes all the way back to 12th spot. All 12 touring car machines are locked in step right now, and captivated by Jaroslav Sabula getting past by Martin van Lozenoord, who is, like I mentioned earlier, having some technical issues, but so far has been able to figure that one out. John, let's talk a little bit about real world stuff as well, because you mentioned about your lack of data at times. I got to see over your shoulder how that works at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But of course, we got to preview what you're going to go and do next year and battle on the bricks.
Oh man, can't wait for that. That was my first trip to IMS. We got the full VIP treatment on the Monday at the museum as well, and that inside story of the museum is available on radiolemans.com as a download. The place is so charismatic. It's not very often when you've been involved in the sport as long as I have that you get to go to new places. And I've ticked off IMS, which I actually thought I would never get to work at. I thought I might go there as a spectator when I retired, whenever that is. And I managed to get there to work. It was magnificent. That is going to be a great event in 2023 for IMSA, and the battle on the bricks, particularly with this category that we're looking at now, the Michelin Endurance, the Michelin Pilot Challenge, as it will be, doing a 4-hour race into the darkness on Indianapolis Motor Speedway, camping on the infield for the first time ever. My goodness, how good is that going to be? As now the next group of cars are coming through this 12-car train in the TCR. Well, that's exactly what we expect in TCR, but now the GT Daytonas are having to fight their way through.
Yeah, this is why we love this traffic class combo as well, because it's not traditional. A lot of these teams are figuring this out on the fly, and as they bank onto the banking again, the Arnage McLaren almost runs into the back of one of the full-send Hondas, and it's so close. It is so close. The sun is coming up as well, so various points on the track, it is right into their eyes. It is likely one of the more difficult situations that they've had to deal with over the course of this season.
Look at that. That is extraordinary. 3 wide into the chicane, and oh my goodness me, everybody's having to this is a great time of day in the Daytona 24 hours. In the booth, literally the sun is right in our eyes. It's coming up, and you get that beautiful orange glow. We've got that now. Look at this drafting going along with the Lamborghini right in behind the McLaren. There's the number 18 down to the inside. Oh, that is a super move. But is he going to get stuck behind the TCRs? No. That is a brilliant manoeuvre down to the inside there, going, and that's difficult, that transition there, if you've ever driven it, and I have done. I've been fortunate to drive it in a couple of different Porsches, thanks to Porsche Cars and Porsche Motorsport North America. That is a bigger transition than it looks. It really, really upsets the cars. That was a great manoeuvre.
I got scared that the McLaren almost got squeezed into the wall because those touring cars had started to file up to get onto the brakes, and Sven Haase was not taking no for an answer after his earlier spin. As always, impressed by the branding. James Armstrong wearing that Brabham t-shirt. These esports organizations, of course, are getting so professional.
Of course.
Josh, let's look forward to GTPs next year, because it's going to happen in the real and the virtual world, with BMW announcing their car joins iRacing in the upcoming weeks. How excited are you about this? Because the cars look fantastic, and it's now the merging in some ways of prototypes, and we're going to see these cars being able to race in America, but on the global stage as well.
I'm going to let you into a little secret. I stayed on after Motul Petit Le Mans for the cost of a couple of hotel nights on the Sunday and the Monday. I got to see 3 of the 4 GTP cars testing at Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta. Now, I know that you know that I get quite excited about motor racing, but what I don't get to do a lot is go and stand trackside. I don't get to take pictures. I don't get to look and listen to the cars. But because I wasn't commentating, I did. And I've got to tell you, I'm not sure I needed very much encouragement to be excited about 2023. But my goodness me, I'm off the scale. If I could change up another gear, I would. I'm on the rev limiter. Oops, hang on. Turns 2. Turn 2. Little bit of an incident there.
Still in Becky Scrivens and that Urano Esports Data Group car, Lewis.
Yeah, it was with Arnage competition. There was contact between the two. I think Scrivens was out wide going through T1. and as he's rejoined, he's come straight into the path of the Arnage competition. He had literally nowhere to go.
So you got triggered instead of Connery Maddock. It was that bad a rejoin.
No, I don't think it was. No, I mean, yeah. No, I don't think it was that bad. I think it was out of control by the push. But it wasn't good. I'll say that.
To be fair, we did see some bad rejoins yesterday in that Digital Nürburgring Endurance Series race. Fortunately, I don't think we showed too many people the rejoins themselves. Here's a look at this one, and it's Sven Haase.
Well, that's not good.
Well, we got a little help there, didn't he? Oh dear! And then the 18 McLaren got involved in that, didn't it?
Yeah, the Arnage competition came through. Aspar also got into contact with him. It was Scrivens coming back across, but Sven Haase had gone down the inside in the gap that simply wasn't there. And then, Scrivens was slightly out of control, rejoined basically onto the Arnage competition car, and Aspar also had nowhere to go. It was not great.
Yeah, let's head down to O'Leary very quickly, because I think he was listening in directly into that 91's team radio. What were the words coming out of Dylan Scrivens after this one?
Yeah, I was just afterwards, and they weren't exactly complimentary, I'm afraid. Just a bit of a complaint from Dylan Scrivens, really, about the move from Sven Haase and everything afterwards as well, saying that just needed a bit more respect into turn one, really, but didn't get it, I'm afraid. That's unfortunate for him, but back going again at least, albeit with a bit of damage.
That is such a tough move, to make into there, and Sven was coming. I can understand why Sven kind of went for that, because it looks like the door's left open, but you've got to be far further alongside than he was, because you were so loading up the right-hand side of the car at that point, braking and turning, that any little slight tap is going to end up in exactly what we saw.
And again, I go back to the spin that we saw from Sven Haase, and I think part of it, the aggression tied back to that one. Steen Ledger now jumps in front of our championship leaders. SimRC have dropped down to 5th, and Lewis, we said all they needed to do was get on the podium to clinch the title. I'm pretty sure they're doing the maths right now as to what they need to do, because that car is not looking fast. And now Lewis McLeod in contention for a Simi Award for Best Commentator of the Year.
Classic microphone usage. Obviously, it was muted because I didn't want to interrupt anyone else, but unfortunately, the button goes both ways. Nice one. Either way, yes, you're absolutely right. SimRC losing out a couple of spots here. They've now got a lot of pressure on their shoulders. You've got, like I said, the Pure Sims car ahead. You've got Apex that are leading the way. Again, the outside chance for the title. R8G's running in 2nd and 3rd. Yeah, this is not looking so good. Now, we'll say that Semper Racing car that's presently sat behind them, they were going quite aggressive early on, and this, what was a 5-car train for the race lead in the touring car category, you can see is getting much, much larger.
It's got all the way to the 12 once more. I mean, this was a question, John, that we had posed a little bit earlier, as I do wonder if Steen Ledger may get a slowdown for that. If you are Nicole Foggy at the front of the field, you've been punching the hole in the air now for going on over half an hour. Do you really still want to be leading and hurting your chances with the fuel strategy?
Well, what have we got? We've got just over 2 hours and 6 minutes still to go. Where would you rather be? Out front punching a hole in the air and letting everybody chase you, or possibly in amongst the battles? I'm not sure. I think... Oh, hang on. And here's a little move here.
R8G look to the front, and Florian Lebigra and Martin van Lozenoord are going to try and work together here to get the championship towards the 108. Nicole Foggy, just as we're talking about him, not leading this race. Lewis, there's a switch up at the front.
Yeah, it becomes an R8G 1-2. Fantastic stuff. Again, just great timing on that one. The 108 and the 188 both coming through now, and Foggy's led every single lap of the 35 minutes thus far. Drops back to 3rd. Obviously, certainly not over right now. You've got to play the long game, and all this as Dur Esports come through as long with the Monaco Esports racing team on board with Foggy right now. Like I say, nervy moments, but still in the title race, still in the hunt, and I don't think there'll be too many panics at the moment.
It's not the only great Apex Racing touring car driver, by the way, to use virtual reality. John, have you ever had the chance to dive into this VR thing?
I did it a few years ago at Bathurst for the Liquid Moly 12 hours, actually, with a Cup car. When the 992 Cup cars first came out, we did a Cup car race at Bathurst on the Bathurst track. And I got so involved in it that when I had the inevitable shunt, I took my hands off the wheel and everything, and I was actually quite shaken up by the fact I'd hit the wall. But I did look around the inside of the car, and I remember saying to the guys who were running it, this is a 992, is it? I can see the slot in the roof, and I can see this, that, and we're like, you are a real norm, aren't you? Well, yeah, I am a bit for Porsches, in fairness. Here's this battle at the front of TCR, coming up the tri-oval. This is nice teamwork, though, by the guys at the front of the field fight, by iRacing Esports. Side by side, the side drafting going on, and that is a change of lead. Now, are they slowing themselves down here, though, guys, and making themselves vulnerable as everybody's queuing up behind?
And there goes SimRC around the outside, trying to get back to the podium. Now, the 188's not the one that's in the championship mix, so I think what they're doing is they are sacrificing their race, knowing that they may have technical issues still to deal with in the back end here, Lewis, and the second half of this race, to just help Florian Labigra do what he can, because all three championship protagonists are up there at the front.
Yeah, the 108 can just save fuel now. It can just play the long game in the race. The only issue is they would have preferred the 199 be the car directly behind that Apex Racing team, because as much as they're an outside bid for the championship, they aren't the championship leaders. That is the SimRC car, which is now directly behind them. And that 176, I don't think it'll be too desperate to make a move on the 108, but it will shadow them all the way through the race. It will save fuel where that car saves fuel. It will play the long game.
Vecchio, by the way, in front of Barneveld in the GTD. Do remember that's a battle that we did see at Indianapolis boil over and then frustrate Gianni Vecchio publicly on social media. Was not too happy with how that battle went on out. That's, of course, that grouping that's still trying to chase down the Apex Racing team. And John, BOP is a topic in the real world. It's a topic here in the virtual world as well. Those two Porsches for the Apex Racing team are so good, but you can't say it's all about BOP when the other Porsches aren't inside the top 10.
Well, and you've got to look at the other mark contenders, haven't you? They're working together. Alejandro and Johan are working really well together. They're barely 2/10 apart, and they're drafting each other. And look at that gap now, 8.5 seconds back to Team 77 in third position. Shout out as well for Turner Motorsport, who compete both in the real world and here in the IMSA series, IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship. They jumped in straight away in 2020 when we launched the IMSA Pro Series. They knew the benefit of this, and this is going back to your question earlier on. You know, we've had livery launches in the virtual world. We've got a proper partnership between Turner Motorsport and BS. I mean, just phenomenal the way these guys have worked together, and that goes back to that original question: is it worth it? Yes, it is. McLaren Philadelphia supporting the Maccas in this race as well, tweeting out at the moment that they're watching here as well, with just on 2 hours and 1 minute to go.
Yeah, do let us know if you're watching on social media, where you're watching from, who you're cheering for. I know there are quite a few rooting for the Apex Racing team as we get set to close out the first 14 minutes of the race here. Do remember, if you want to learn more about this IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championships, scan the QR code on your screen where you can get up to date with the various championship standings, learn more about the drivers. IMSA has done a great job to get a one-stop shop.
Fancy. Yeah. That's fancy.
Technology,
like that. Right? Yes. You know, we don't get that even in real world IMSA racing. That we need to get that fired up to get the quick response codes up. Excellent stuff. So just on 2 hours to go then, fellas. What do we reckon? Where do we think everybody is? We've had no pit stops yet. We've 22 laps in for the GT Daytona cars, 19 for the touring cars, and at the moment nobody. Okay, take the two Apex GTD Porsches out of it, but nobody else with a massive advantage at the moment, and it's going to come down to fuel mileage here as well as speed.
Well, one thing to remember in that touring car class is the fuel tank is limited to about an hour in terms of fuel. Minimum drive time is also about 45 minutes, so we have seen some teams elect to get their first driver out as well. That's Alejandro Sanchez cutting it a bit closer than you wanted to as he splits the R8G leading touring car machines. Lewis, that is maybe more risk than we would have expected out of those two at the front.
Yeah, that ain't worth it when you got a 7.2 second lead. I think you might see them choose differently the next time they come through traffic. I mean, they are very, very good. They're just getting on with what they're doing. Obviously, for the touring cars, you now know that they'll be about 6 seconds behind, and the rest of them will start coming through, as is the advantage that the Apex Racing team have had thus far. But like you say, you know what this game is like when you're going racing at Daytona. Fuel strategy is king, and the draft is your friend. And so sometimes it's going through traffic. This time, probably less so.
Ryan Barneveld in the BMW PS Plus competition, the Bureau Sud car, just what we were talking about. Ryan having to pick his line. Oh, it goes down then up to the top through Speedway Turn 2. Sun in his eyes, which was what Arjuna was talking about earlier on. Just about still getting the draft from the two cars ahead. The red line, Gianni Vecchio and the Team 77 Oscari Rene car as they go into the chicane. Oh my goodness me, this is concentration squared at the moment. I tell you what, fellas, this is great stuff, and can I just give you a shout out for what great work you and the guys from VCO and Drew Adamson and the guys from iRacing events have put on this year. I've been dropping in and out of this throughout the 3 previous events as well, and obviously we've seen the highlights and the race results. This has been great racing, hasn't it? All through the year, Lewis. You must have enjoyed being a part of this.
Oh, sensational. I've seen so much of the world of sim racing, and yet when this championship was announced and me and Arjuna were discussing it and whatnot and how we were going to tackle this championship from the commentary booth,
sorry.
Loved it.
I'm going to cut you off here, Lewis. We've had a monumental shunt here on the banking, and this is what we were slightly scared of. The one possibility for a safety car here in this IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship, a parked stationary car. Tristan Iglesias, not the first time he's had some bad luck. He is not the only car that was mixed up in that one. Naveed Hussein directly down to the pit lane. Lewis, I'll come back to you. Remember, we had 2 safety cars at Laguna Seca. One was relatively uncontentious. This was 3 wide, Team 75 around the outside. They play bumper cars. It's like going back to January in the iRacing Raw before. Iglesias, I'll say maybe he could have been on the brakes, but he's trying to dive down low and get out of the way. A clumsy situation.
Was that the Impulse car that was involved in that as well? The 122, Robin Monster?
It was certainly one of the Impulse cars.
I think it was the 122,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it must have been. I think they are the only Impulse car in this championship. But yeah, no, that was dicey. I don't really know if the Altus car had lifted that. I'm going to say, based on the speed of that impact, probably not. But like I say, 3 wide going around 3 and 4. Don't get me wrong, there is more than enough room. I think there's enough room for 5 if you really want to take the mix. It was just 4. Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, 4 is always asking for trouble. And once they start ping-ponging off each other, it's, well, there's no brakes used, but I also think if we ride on board with that Altus Lamborghini, there is less time to react given the speed that he is coming into the pile of smoke to really figure things out. No safety car, crucially, though. 2 retirements, I think, guaranteed out of that one. Full Send Racing's 185, as well as the Impulse 122. Altus probably guaranteed to be a retirement as well. Here's the look.
Yeah, they're not lifting at all.
No chance at all there. Got down to the apron and did exactly the right thing, guys. But there's no way through that. Because even if you'd brake there at that kind of pace, all you're doing is delaying the inevitable, Lewis, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to say, maybe he didn't do anything really other than going onto the apron, but it is what it is. Normally, when you're seeing a crash on the oval, obviously, typically you expect that the crash goes up the oval and then comes back down, which is exactly what we saw there. Like you say, even if he had slowed down, he was probably trying to outrun the inevitable in just a slightly different way. Kind of one of those ones where you're seeing it happen and going, I'm probably going to be a part of this crash, so I might as well try something to get through it. Might as well.
Yeah, I mean, we throw around the term Arca brakes. I don't think that falls into that category at all, because he was trying to take mitigating action. Again, 4 wide was a bit silly, asking for trouble. But it's the final round of this championship, and drivers will want to make sure they figure it out. Hopefully, I know Lorenzo Bonder, you and O'Leary are working to try and get us a chat with those drivers as the touring car leaders now see the GTD cars come through once more. It has broken up slightly, 5 cars separated by then 1 second to Semper Racing, and John, you can see then a big gaggle further back.
Yeah, what you've got to say is that in Full Metal Racing as well, when you get that many cars at different paces on the high banks here, you are in real issue of what the air is doing, and that's accurately modelled in iRacing. So a tiny manoeuvre on the steering wheel can make a big difference. Add in latency, add in net cord issues, and these guys are performing at a phenomenally high level of concentration, and also the reflexes that you need to take. It's tiny inputs on to all the controls at the moment. I don't think it's helping, actually, that the 2 R8 G Esports cars, the 108 Martin van Leuzenhoorn and Florian Lebinger, are actually getting out of line from each other. They're not sitting line astern on the high banks. And when they get side by side, I'm not sure they're helping themselves because they're not breaking away from what's going behind, but they're certainly not helping the GTD cars that are coming through.
Already a bit of comments, by the way, about how GTDs need to remember that there are some touring cars having their own race as well. We are past 45 minutes, by the way, so we're at the point where you can come in and get your driver change done and satisfy the minimum drive time for one of your drivers. I did see Dominic Blyer in the Triton Racing McLaren come on in, but he is still stationary on pit lane. Do not believe we are going to see them. Down to you and O'Leary, because let's talk about strategy and fuel strategy in touring cars with about 13 minutes to go until the pit stop window will open, Ewan, and SimRC are thinking about how they will stay in this draft.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of discussion, actually more discussion about pit stops at the moment than there is about what's going on the circuit for SimRC. Just seeing the idea for them, the most important thing I should say for them right now is staying in the draft. They're not really that interested whether they've got a lapse fuel over the rest or what they've got. They're just looking to stay in the draft really at that point, and I guess that's all they have to do. Let's not forget a podium would secure them a title today.
Plenty still to fight for. Do remember, by the way, as well, plenty of exciting deals right now for those looking to either stay within the iRacing circle or to join the iRacing circle. To learn about how you can get started on your iRacing career, head over to iRacing.com today, where it's not just discounts for new members. The Black Friday sale has discounts for you trying to get your renewal as well. I don't know about you, Lewis, but this is that time of year where I always sign up for at least 1, if not 2 years.
Yeah, you got to get ahead of it. You got to. Let's be honest. Most of us, we're going to be on the service for a while. I have been since 2014, which, when you really think about it, is a concerningly large amount of money. And so when you have times like this, you're just all like, right, let's get on top of that. Let's get prepared for the year to come. Yeah, you might as well. You might as well.
Lewis, what are you talking about? It's not a set of tyres when you go racing in Full Metal Racing.
That is true.
I'm telling you. When I was racing for Aston Martin Lagonda in the Creventic series at Kota, and we were debating whether to spend $1,200 on another set of tyres when we were in second and chasing the leading class. $1,200, right? Yeah. That was one set of tyres, and by no means are the Hankook tyres the most expensive tyres that you can buy in terms of single tyre supply around the world in manufacturing. So, you know, when you're talking about your investment over the last few years, trust me, you are getting an absolute bargain. And when I get the opportunity to go racing, which I don't enough, I always make sure I jump on to iRacing and do it a day or a half a day and make sure that I know the circuit and I know the car that I'm going, because you never get enough time at the track in real life. And to be able to shortcut, not just whether it goes left or right, but some of the nuances, some of the braking points, where you think you're going to have to short shift, all that kind of thing. absolutely invaluable. So that investment that you're making in your iRacing, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are around the world listening in, that is an absolute bargain. If you want more information on how to start your racing career on iRacing, go to iRacing.com right now and tell them we sent you.
Yes, I'll take a referral if we can. Here comes more traffic coming their way through, as it's getting a bit dicey now with the Apex Racing team losing out to SimRC as they try and battle their way forward. Beeler Racing Team, by the way, did get a drive-through penalty, I think, for their part in that contact with Urano, so Race Control trying to keep on top of things. But Lewis, I did also note that the Apex machines at the front of the GTD field put their best laps in of the race on the same lap and matched times down to the 1,000th.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
the joy. It's the joys when you're sat directly behind them. Whatever time the car ahead's doing, the time is the car behind's doing. It just shows they are bump drafting every single time on there, and the fact they've broken the gap now, they're over 8.5 seconds back to those behind. It's the Apex show today, but one safety car can change the course of history. So who knows?
Do you think they're managing it already, guys? Because they've been out at 8.5, they're nearly 8.8 seconds now, but they've been over 8 seconds since I started talking to you. Look at this. I mean, this is formation driving by the two Apex Porsches. They are absolutely doing what they need to do, no more, no less. Are they managing this now, Lewis?
I think so. I mean, this is what our junior was said about earlier on in the broadcast, is that Johan Hart had said before we went live, had told our junior that they reckoned when bump drafting, when doing this, they can safely go 3, 4, 5 tenths faster than everyone else. And that's roughly what they're doing. They've just done, the last lap time was a 42.5. And then for everyone behind, 42.9s basically. Lovely. For those further back. Beautiful pace just being set by them. But like you said, controlled. Not any risk. Not anything crazy apart from that weird bit that we saw through traffic. Won't talk about that too much. Outside that, it's been calm and measured. They've not done anything silly. And they're just staying in formation. And
just to underline what you've said there, Johan Hart, who's in second position, has just done the fastest lap of the race, a 42.487 against a 42.488 for Alejandro Sanchez, who's ahead of him. And by the way, it's not as if anybody else behind aren't pushing. Ryan Barneville did a 42.949 last time around, time before now. That was his fastest lap of the race in the Team BMW BS Plus competition. So it's not as if anyone else is like, oh, we've given up now. These guys are just doing a great job. And where's the next Porsche? To your point, Arjuna, where's the next Porsche when we were talking about BOP after these two?
Yeah, it's MSI in 9th. You have Team 75 in 12th. It's not a guaranteed sign of victory, although we did see in a race, I think it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, the Porsche was BOP'd by getting 55 kilos added to it, which is basically half of me if you cut me in half. So that does not sound pleasurable to...
If you cut you in half.
That sounds pleasurable to Lewis, that is for sure, not having to deal with me ever again in the future.
Which half? Hang on, I want to know which half we're having. Are we having the top half or the bottom half? The bottom half is much quieter, Lewis.
It depends. You might go left and right. You might go left and right.
Oh, down the middle, okay.
Yes. See, there's somebody who thinks out of the box. Look at the way these Apex cars are driving, though. There's a little bit of bump drafting on the straights, but then backing away on the corners. Race Control in the real world would be very happy about that. There's another fastest lap by Johan Hart. Just trimmed another 1/1000th of a second. So 42.487 against a 4.88. I mean, just phenomenal.
Oh, we got pit stops. We have pit stops. It's going to be a flurry, and it's 4 minutes before the top of the hour? 6 minutes before the top of the hour. That is a very early stop. And again, it's a 2 hour, 40-minute race, so it will work out slightly differently. Lewis, do you think we see driver changes here?
I don't know. We've kind of said this before in the rounds that we've seen previously. It's that typically you want one driver to do 1 hour and then the other driver to do about 1 hour and 40 is normally how it goes. It depends what kind of strategy you're running. For me, I would think that we wouldn't see driver swaps right now. You'd want to stop them basically in about 40 minutes time, and that sounds crazy to do a short stint in the middle, but sometimes we've seen that a few times this season work out to actually be a slightly better strategy to do the shorter stint in the middle, and then you're doing your fastest driver big stint, then basically half a stint, and then you're getting in your, in air quotes, slower driver in for that final stint, but then they're doing a full hour. I think that's typically how we've seen quite a lot of strategies. I don't expect to see too many driver swaps right now.
Tyres? No tyres on this one, guys.
It will all depend on if you do the driver change or not, because if you don't do the driver change, the way that the meta, that's the word that we use in esports now, the meta has evolved. You never want to take tires if you're not taking drivers, and I still think there may be a team that gambles and takes just 1 or 2 tires when they do change drivers to try something different. The Apex Racing team indeed will jink in left. Surprised to see them come in together, but they do so in formation and without any drama.
Well, and the advantage you have, of course, here is you don't have to double stack. You don't have to worry about how you weave around each other, because you can actually drive through each other in the pit lane here, which you can't do in the real world. But actually, they've come in the right order in terms of the 98 is the car that is further up the pit lane, closest to pit out, and pretty much everybody inside the top 10 now has come in. So who is the... So it's Barneveld who stopped first in the BMW Team BS Plus competition, BMW the 89, and he stayed on board. So we've got to watch for where he is on the circuit and whether he's got the dreaded undercut. Even I hate using that word. Performance advantage of the new tyres.
Yes, well, it was a big gap for him to try and close on up. Do note, Gianni Vecchio and Max Benecke in both of the Team Redline entries have been able to extend 1 lap longer. Don't forget, you have to wait a lot longer now beyond where the pit limiter line used to be because of that RFID system that Michelin brought over to IMSA a handful of years ago, replicated here in the sim. It does mean, fortunately, Lewis, you don't have to worry about crashing through that access lane.
I mean, you say that. I've still seen it. I think we saw it a couple of times earlier in the year. It's still possible, so you never know. On that one, we'll say I think we might have another retirement, by the way, because I saw Triton had come back in. It might just be for damage repair, but Triton did come back in. Remember, they were ones that made pit stops. Basically, the first was to come in a lot earlier on in the race. There is a bit of damage on the rear end. They've returned to pit lane as we see Gianni Vecchio come down onto the lane.
We do also have a drive-through penalty to note for the number 55 Mercedes-AMG Williams car that, of course, was fighting inside the top 5 of the championship. It was contact with the Impulse 122 that, of course, has now retired from the race, but that was into the Le Mans chicane. It still feels weird to call it that, John. It will live on as the bus stop in my heart.
Yeah, but it's a nice piece of synergy, isn't it, between the fact that we've got a Daytona chicane at Le Mans and now we have a Le Mans chicane at Daytona. It underlines this convergence that we have in the racing worlds between what used to be 2 very different philosophies of racing between the North American Endurance Championship, call it IMSA, call it the American Le Mans Series. Although in fairness, when it was the American Le Mans Series, it was effectively the unofficial World Championship. There wasn't a WEC in those days. There didn't need to be. We had the ALMS instead. But I do think it's really important. Now this is important. Here's the red line cars coming back out again. And by the way, I've still seen people hit the wall with that pit lane speed limit only being released about now for that red line car. That's a bit closer, I think, than they would have liked as they're coming out here. So who's this coming up behind?
Oscar Rene.
It is a Rene.
Yeah, Rene coming up in the Team 77 machine. And that is a bit closer than they would have liked, I think.
So Apex did take less fuel in this cycle, by the way. They stopped for 35, 36 seconds, respectively. I think indicating short stint here, driver change, and then they'll go from there and figure the strategy out. Red line in front of Team 77 and broken the draft, crucially. Lewis, let's touch on this. We did at the start of the show, and we really haven't mentioned it since then. But, of course, the number 77, under a new team name for today is Dylan Strivens fighting with the Monaco Esports car. Jaden Laydick trying to get the move done as he'll be squeezed to the inside of the corner. And, well, Strivens is not one to let this move hang around. And after the contact that he had to that right-hand side, he will fend that one back off. But to go back to Kova, parent company unfortunately went bankrupt. The team is by itself. We don't know what the future holds for them. They are racing today as a communal Finnish organization, if you will.
Yes, esports, as we'll see, Full Send and Pure Sims go side by side. Esports is becoming more financially lucrative and whatnot for a lot of these teams, a lot of these drivers and whatnot. These competitors, a lot of them are in it now. Full price, etc. That's an incredible part of the sport that's been moving forward. But unfortunately, with that, money has to come from somewhere. The parent company of Kova, unfortunately, disappearing, folding, and whatnot. It means that there's a lot of drivers that are sort of free guns. We'll see where they end up in the next few weeks. But like you say, I think it is amazing that we're seeing them still in the teams out on track, rather than going, no, actually, do you know what? We're not going to take part in this. I love the fact that they're having one final go at it. I think that's an amazing thing. I know it's not under the Kova brand, obviously, with that being put to one side under Team 77 and Team 7. I think it's a brilliant thing just to see them one last hurrah together.
And it's something, John, that's happening in the real world as well, with Core Motorsport saying goodbye as well at the end of this year.
That's actually a great story. Sad to lose John Bennett's organisation, but he had an unwritten gentleman's agreement that he didn't want to drive with anybody other than Colin Brown. Colin's been picked up. He's finally been picked up by a works team. He's been one of the fastest drivers. Let's not forget that John Bennett and Colin Brown nearly won the championship in an LMP2 car. And in fact, the fact they got so close, the manufacturers weren't happy about that, and that's why IMSA had to change the BOP, equalisation technology, stratification of the classes, call it what you will, so that the P2 cars couldn't get on terms with the then DPIs. Whoa. So that has been a super...
3 wide.
Oh, look at that.
Sorry, John, I love that story, but I got nervous because there was championship implications there, and the RHG 108 had to back out of it because Full Send's 158, lived up to the name, and Full sent it down into turn 1, and they now sit on the podium, still fighting side by side.
Predator going through, though, the 108 car on the inside there with Florian diving down the inside in the R8 Esports, and doesn't get it done through the kink and the dog leg down to the Western Horseshoe. Traffic coming through as well. Oh, dear me, this is getting a bit all unnecessary, isn't it, with still the TCR cars very close together as they come to rejoin the high banks, and still just under 100 minutes still to run here. Guys, got to talk about finish the story very quickly about Colin Brown and John Bennett. Lovely story. Colin deserves his drive in the works team. He'll be super quick with Acura and Michelin Racing, excuse me. And John Bennett has honoured what he thought. He just didn't want to race with anybody else, and that's very cool. Also, though, in this race, I want to talk about the tactics at the front of the field, Lewis. The two Apex teams have kept their drivers on board. I suspect they've not changed tyres, but they did a timed pit stop for fuel, and they might suffer later on with tyre wear, but they were 8 seconds, nearly 9 seconds ahead. That went out to 16. It's now under 13. Is that working for them or not?
I think this is fine. I think, again, they know the numbers that they're running to. They're going to keep it on their strategy. I think this is absolutely fine. They've got a lot going on behind the scenes. By the way, I've just seen Full Send nearly taking out R8G on the entry to pit lane because the touring cars are coming in. Honda's looking great in this race, Arjuna. They are looking potent when it comes to their speed.
Yeah, no, I think for the first time, Honda is right up there in the mix of things. Traditionally eat a little bit more fuel, so maybe it's not a shock to see them come in. But as this pit stop cycle gets underway, an hour of racing is done. We've got an hour and 14 minutes still left to play in this race, but in the 2022 IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship. Let's run you down through hour 1 highlights here from the World Center of Racing, because boy, what a crazy opening start to the race it was. Apex Racing, as expected, did slot into single file formation as they jockeyed into the first corner. Behind them, it was not so tidy, and totally chaotic racing was expected. Team 7 in their finished tribute paint ended up backing up through the International Horseshoe Pure Sim, spinning around as a result of that, but no major drama, no major damage at least to speak of there. The damage started to come after that. Biela Racing Team had a spin trying to find a way around the outside of BS Turner. It will get more dramatic after that. Not the only full send that we'd see from that 158 over the course of the day, but this was just an indication of what was to come. 3 and then 4 wide through the traffic. It ended up just as you'd expect. There's a bit of contact with the 185 full send racing car with Roman Grosjean Esports 188 machine. And bump drafting was the story of the day for Grand Touring Daytona cars, both at the front but in the mid-pack as well. Apex Racing were using that strategy to perfection to build the gap up at the front, but they did so with aggression through traffic as well. Biela forcing Dylan Shrivens out of the way, Arnage's McLaren getting tagged, as well as Aspar's Ferrari. Drive-through penalty would come down to Sven Haase as a result of that one. And after leading for about 40 minutes, Nicole Foggy in the Apex Racing Team car saw R8G hit the front with not one but 2 of their Honda Civic Type Rs. For a while, it was Apex 1 and 2, R8G 1 and 2 across the 2 classes, but pit stops have changed the game and things are going to get interesting. My name is Arjuna Kenkipati. Delighted to have your company here on RaceSpot TV, VCO Esports, and on the iRacing Esports Network. Along with me, Lewis McLeod, as well as Ewan O'Leary down in pit lane. We got special guest John Hindorf joining us as well. John, 1 hour done, still plenty of racing to go.
This is bonkers. I mean, bonkers good in a phenomenally fantastic way. Exactly the sort of TCR racing that we expect. The first hour has gone over in the blink of an eye. I suspect we've not yet seen everything that everybody's got to give. I still think that we'll see tactics play out before the end of this. There will be, particularly for the touring cars, which we've not seen all of them into the pit lane yet. The top 4 at the moment have not stopped. So SimRC, RAG Esports 108, Apex 199, and Steam Ledger in the Pure Sims Esports 116 have not yet stopped in the pit lane. So they have yet to do their stop. So they're pushing this quite a long way, Lewis.
Yeah, they're really getting the mileage in. This is the thing, when you've sat in the slipstream for so long, sometimes it's a painful price early on, right? It is a painful price, but it's a price that makes the race so much easier late on. Again, it's short-term pain, long-term gain, and that is exactly what they've been going through, playing the strategy to a T right now. For SimRC, like I said, even when they were losing out all those positions, they dropped back to 4th in class, to the point where potentially they might have started thinking about the championship slipping through their fingers. They've kept their head very, very clean indeed, and they are going longer than even the R8G and Apex team behind them. I'll say Foggy did a great job, considering leading most of the early point of the race, to have gone that long in the stint. Fantastic stuff.
I almost did a Lewis McLeod there and muted myself and started talking.
Nice.
I was just about to ask, was there any possibility that they'd be able to extend this race out another 5 or so minutes, to the point where, with a safety car, they may very feasibly think about a one-stop, but it got answered right on cue. SimRC will extend furthest of them all. Now we see how long the pit stop times will be. Nicole Foggy out, Guile Valero in, Florian Lebigra out, Valentin Mandenak in. Nicole Foggy, Guile Valero very equally matched on speed. Florian Lebigra, Valentin Mandenak also very equally matched on speed. It's something we've talked about over the course of the season, Lewis. Even in a top-level sim racing lineup with 2 drivers, you will tend to see driver differences. This is not the case for these 2 cars.
No, I mean, it's very impressive. Like I say, normally we'd expect to see 1 or 2 tenths between them at the top level. But as years goes on, as the competitive nature of sim racing gets higher and higher, more drivers than ever taking part in sim racing, with its absolute rise over the last few years. We're seeing this point where there are even more drivers up at the top end, meaning that there is even more choice, and it means that generally we are seeing less and less margin between your driver A and your driver B, and that's exactly the case here.
That, guys, absolutely reflects real-world racing. In the days where I've been around a lot longer than you two, probably more than you two put together, and I'm not seeing that as any detriment at all. But you used to get gentleman drivers who would turn up and do practice and qualifying. That would be the only time they drove the car before they got into the race. You can't do that now. You have to be dedicated to what you're doing. Esports is exactly the same. Just doing a bit of practice. Oh, let's do an hour before we get into the race. No. That is not going to work. We know from talking to the teams in the VCO Grand Slam events that we have got, if there's 3 people in the team, you're doing 3 different sets of practice and 3 different sets of data to try and find out where the sweet spot for the setup is to get potentially that get that extra couple of laps, to not deg the tyres too much. This is proper stuff. And as I say again, as you've heard me say many times before, this might be virtual racing, but it's real talent and real commitment. And the racing is absolute. And it's total commitment nowadays. Has to be. Because it's tiny margins. We are talking about not the 5% anymore. We're talking about the 2%, the 1%, aren't we, Arjun?
Yes, no, we are. So, change around, by the way, in touring car when it comes to strategy, because Pure Sims have gambled. They have done a driver change. Steen Ledger out, Ross McFarlane in, who is a feisty man behind the wheel of any touring car. But about 8 seconds shorter in terms of fuel, trying to get track position, trying to do something different. We'll see exactly how it goes. Let's bring in, by the way, they've been waiting quite patiently to talk to us, Chris Shorter out of the Impulse 122 camp, who I think it's fair to say, Chris, you were excited to be part of this grid for the IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship, but it's been up and down in what is a top-level multi-class endurance series.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's been a really awesome championship, and really grateful to have been a part of it, but unfortunately luck hasn't been on our side. I think at the last round, unfortunately, one of our drivers had a technical issue, so we had to throw in our joker, which cost us a penalty, and then we were at the back of the field, and sort of out of draft and way off the pack, so that destroyed that race. And now just getting caught up in traffic once again. Yeah, a very disappointing way to finish the season.
Yeah, we're seeing that replay up as well. I'll ask you a little bit, though. Impulse has been around this touring car class since it debuted in iRacing with just the one car and the one manufacturer, but it's got a breath of fresh air now with so many more cars. How are you enjoying being back in touring car competition with so many top-level drivers?
Definitely loving it. iRacing desperately needed it, and I'm really glad that we got it. And I think thanks to IMSA for their partnership with iRacing for bringing us the great content and the cars and the good racing that comes along with it. And luckily for us, it's not the end of the year just yet. There's still quite a few big races coming up that we'll switch our full focus towards.
Chris, it's Hindhoff here. How are you, fella?
I'm good, thanks, and yourself?
Yeah, I'm all right, actually. Had a decent day today, seen a bit of sunshine, which at this time of the year you've got to be happy about, haven't you? Let's be honest.
For sure.
What is it that keeps you guys in the touring car category when, you know, for the most part in these multi-class races, you're not going to be the top class? Where's the challenge for you, and what's the motivation there?
I think it comes with its own challenges. I think for us, managing traffic is really hard, not being in control of what the other cars around you are doing. When you are in the faster class, you can obviously sort of decide, do you want to go for the move? Do you not? And TCR is a lot about draft racing and saving fuel. The draft is huge in terms of lap time, so trying to stay in the train is a really tough job, especially when there's faster class traffic mixed up amongst you. And I think it's just great to be competing against such top teams and professional teams. I mean, we're competing with teams that have links to real world motorsport teams, and it just keeps pushing us to better ourselves. And I think also racing on this level is really it's brought a breath of fresh air into the entire team. It's great to be on the grid with professional teams and professional drivers, and something that we can hopefully experience a lot more of in the future.
Thanks for your support, mate, and it's good to see Impulse on the grid. Need a second car, mate. I reckon you need a second car and a couple of more drivers to get a bit of more data and get a bit of help, eh?
We've definitely got the drivers, so if we get the invite for 2 cars next season, we will be there with 2 cars.
Thanks for joining us, Chris. Appreciate the time. Sorry, the season comes to an end. 3 wide for a moment in GTD. It's Williams Esports Razor along with Team 75 Burner by SimRC, and then the Urano Mercedes that are battling on the run down to turn 1. They've got the touring car leader in front of them as well to deal with. Of course, this is a gaggle for 9th on back, and these are cars, Lewis, that have some championship implications to fight for.
Yeah, obviously not battling for the championship itself, but for those positions inside the top 10. See, I'm almost inside the top 5. Williams Esports Razor, the last time we checked in on the points, they were running 6th on those points, battling quite close with quite a few others. Need to get on with it, really, today. Where they're sat right now, obviously post the first pit lane sequence, 11th spot. We saw both the Williams Esports cars inside the top 10 earlier on, and they're both running now 11th and 12th. I think the Williams AMG team, Williams Esports car, has been for a longer stop because of the driver swap, I believe. No, it's been Daniel Pastor since the start. They just had a longer stop than everyone else, so fair enough. But they've dropped a lot of time in the pit lane.
Yeah, I think the strategy is, again, it's what we've seen over the course of the season. John, 2 hours and 40 minutes is an awkward race length, to put it mildly.
It's brilliant though, isn't it? It's been 2 hours 40, 2 hours 45 was ALMS and IMSA, and the way in Full Metal Racing that's been justified is that the stint times don't make that an easy choice, and the minimum driver time, and it's exactly the same here in the IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship, and that means the guys on the wall, the virtual wall as it is here, have to do a bit of work as well, and that to me makes it an endurance race. It's a sprint endurance race, but it's still an endurance race, as it looks like Jamie Munn is going around the 14. No, that was a lap car, excuse me, that he was going around. So Jamie just getting around there in that number 75, Team 75 burn up by SimRC. So sitting in, that's Timo's team, sitting in 9th position at the moment. And coming through the dog leg. Starting to get a bit lighter now as well. The headlight's not making that much of a difference to what is going on. Carl Jansen for Williams Esports sitting in behind Luca Kita in the Mercedes, just making that pass, or trying to make that pass, should I say. There's Carl in 11th at the moment as they're heading around. Guys, I've got to ask you a serious question here, and Arjuni, you know, because you've seen me work. How do you guys sit down for this 2 hours and 40 minutes? I'm standing up here in the Hagerty Global Broadcast Centre, and I have been since before I connected to you, just before the race. How do you guys sit down? Because this is absolutely outstanding racing.
Well, to let people in behind the scenes, part of why we're sitting down is because Lewis and myself can actually see each other, which is a nice thing. It's very, John, you've worked with your colleagues now in person, but also remote. It's very different when you're actually able to look at each other and do inappropriate things like Lewis likes to do to me when I get things wrong.
Whoa, what you are like? That is really throwing me under the bus.
So hang on, so nobody can see that. Only I can see that you and Lewis are dressed the way you're dressed. I mean, I can describe how you're dressed if you want.
Lewis is trying to get you to read a note up there. Like I said, he's trying to put me off my game when we're doing intros and things. Lewis is having fun with this. I do, the longer broadcast, I do tend to stand. 2 hours and 40. You can actually help us answer a question, John, because me and Lewis were having an argument yesterday. What is the minimum amount of time for a race to be classified as an endurance race?
I think that's a really difficult question to answer, because there are some very long races that I don't honestly think are endurance races, because if things are very prescriptive with pit stop times and stint times and such like, then you're taking away the strategic element. Whereas even with these 2 hour 40 minutes, or in Michelin Pilot Challenge, 2 hours normally, you still have to do some thinking, and there are strategic considerations to make. I think that's a good question, and I don't think there's a single answer, because I think it does come down to how hard the drivers and the teams have to work together and how they have to react to what's going on. I would say, bizarrely, and I'm not sure whether I won't say whether I think this is right or wrong. I think Formula One is an endurance race now. And I'll tell you why I say that, as we're just watching a fantastic draft by Carl Jansen on the back of Jamie Moon as they come down through the tri-oval into the first part of the infield circuit. There was a little bit of bumping there from the green Williams Esports Mercedes on the back of the 75 Porsche. Don't bend that Porsche, please. I'll tell you why I think Formula One is an endurance race, because of the tyre regs, and because the fact they have to use 2 tyres, and because we're talking far more than we should have to be in Formula One about tyre degradation and who's used what to whom. If you watched F2 this weekend at Abu Dhabi, and I did, that's a little mini endurance race, because you have to use both of the compounds, and one of them lasts about 6 laps, and so you've got to be very clever about when and where you use the tyres. Now, does that make it an endurance race in terms of distance? Then no. But if you're talking about how do you use tactics and strategy, then probably yes. I'm not sure. I'm not saying whether I think that's right or wrong, by the way. But as an endurance fan and somebody who sees things in 3D, I actually quite enjoy working out who's got to do another stop or another stop or another stop after that, and where the actual relative positions are. So we're looking for a battle for position here with the BS competition car. Reinhold Barneveld looking for 5th position at the moment. And look at these 3 cars absolutely together as they head once again into the infield section.
Been a good fight up and down through the field. That gap, by the way, up to the Apex Racing Team cars, up to 15 seconds. Let's talk very quickly about live points, because you can see it was a bit of a shake-up inside the top 4 earlier. Not so much anymore, but the strategy may flip-flop around as we work our way later in this race. Of course, strategy's playing its part out here, Lewis, because Luca Kita, we heard from Ewan O'Leary and Lorenzo Bonda, let the Williams Esports Razor car pass. They are all just trying to hit some fuel numbers.
Yeah, and that is a big part of the tactics of this race. You want to play the fuel game. Again, draft is your friend, and sometimes it's not worth trying to, well, in fact, pretty much the entirety of this race for 2 hours and 38 minutes of it, it's not worth trying to keep the car behind. Just let them go ahead of you. If they want to burn fuel, that's absolutely brilliant. I mean, you come from the world, of course, in esports stuff, of doing the IndyCar stuff, obviously IndyCar community. You know a thing or two in that little 500-mile race that you got, which also I think we probably consider as an endurance race now.
Totally.
After all the discussions that we were having yesterday.
Well, yes, no, actually, to be fair, John and I actually had a similar answer. Lewis, you were of the opinion...
still... I think it's a single driver thing. It's close, and it's the closest thing that you can get in an oval racing, but I still maintain, and I don't really, 4 hours minimum for me. If it's a race that's under 4 hours, I'm like, no, it's not an endurance race.
Lewis, honestly, I understand that. I do understand that, and I'm not going to argue with it. I think that in terms of time, you're absolutely right. So how do you feel about then 500-mile NASCAR or IndyCar races that can go to 4 hours or beyond? Is that an endurance race as a single driver?
Well, that's what we brought up yesterday, the Coke 600. I think, fundamentally, that is a pure endurance as a driver, because
totally
like you said, that can go up to 3-4 hours. And when it's as a single driver, that is 100% a full-on endurance. And Indy 500 is in that vein as well, because that can go up for the same kind of period.
What I love about those races, and having been fortunate enough to talk to some of the drivers who've done that, is working in stock cars or in Indy cars, working with your, particularly in stock cars, in the Cup Series, with your engineer to get the car that is where you want it in the last 100 miles or the last 75 miles. And there are drivers down through the years, Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus, for example, with their race engineers, who have been absolutely outstanding and have been sitting in the mid-teens or the late teens, and then all of a sudden they pop up in the last 50 miles, 20 miles, whatever it is. usually after maybe after a late race caution, but they've got a car that can go. That to me is the epitome of endurance racing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what a race we've got going on here, by the way. Focusing back onto the race, and we saw the GTD points. I think we're pretty about time to take a look at those touring car points, Arjuna.
Yeah, let's talk about them. It's a lot of mix-up outside of the top three, which is where we wanted the excitement to happen. Of course, prize money split across the two classes, $25,000 in total over the 4 rounds. It's a nice, healthy prize pot for these drivers in what is also a short championship, John. I think it's one thing that is beneficial to these drivers. A lot of championships take 6 months, a year to complete. This is over in 6 weeks' time.
Yeah, and that's great, isn't it? Because you are totally and utterly focused, and so is everybody who's watching. You don't get time to take a month or 6 weeks off and then reconvene. You are watching this. So how far ahead of Sim RC does Valentin and the R8G guys have to finish to get this championship?
I think the 108 from memory. 188. Which one? Yes, 108 needs to finish in leads to win. And I think it's about where the 176 finishes comparatively. I think it's 4th. I think they need to be on the podium. So right now for SimRC, I think it might be right. Arjuna might have something to say on that one.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty.
Maths.
Yeah, I think it was pretty simple from Ewan O'Leary, who did the math pre-race for us. Again, don't trust his math either, even though he's technically a pit road reporter today. He said a podium was enough for SimRC to secure the championship, no matter what anyone else did. And I don't know if that even factored in qualifying points, which of course saw SimRC grab second in front of R8G, so extends the advantage by about 2 points in all things considered. Now, no bump drafting is one thing that I have noticed with these drivers. Of course, they're being a little bit wiser, and I think just trying to keep themselves out of trouble. They've not really been closing too much on that Pure Sims car that, of course, took about 8 seconds shorter in terms of fuel. That's, of course, going to compromise them as we enter into that final cycle of pit stops. And if you haven't done the driver change just yet, you will need to make sure it is done before we hit 45 minutes left to go, because you don't want to flirt with drive time rules. Something that, by the way, has changed in the real world because of a certain incident under red flag earlier this year.
Oh, has it ever? Yeah, that was it. That was at Watkins Glen, where it actually, and this is nobody's fault. It's just one of those things that happen where you can't write a set of rules for every eventuality, but we got to a situation where there were some cars who couldn't make drive time, even if they'd changed the driver straight away when we got back to green. And so IMSA, being IMSA, have been fairly pragmatic about that and said, yeah, we're not going to let that happen again. We'll rewrite the regulations. Just looking at this battle, by the way, for 3rd spot on the podium at the moment, Gianni Vecchio, the Team Redline, cannot break away from the Team 77 car. And are we still calling him 10K Beneke, or has he dropped back
10K.
again? He's back to 10K again now.
10K. Yeah.
I know he dropped down for a little while in the Team Redline 71. He's not that far away either. So we've got 3 cars under a second and a half for 3rd, 4th, and 5th in the overall. Plus a great battle. TCR, you always expect this, and now 17.5 seconds between the two Apex 98 and 97 Porsches. Alejandro Sanchez and Johan Hart, who've been in since the start of the race. Beneke and Barneveld both putting in their fastest laps of the race last time around. This is getting really, really interesting at the front of the field and, gents, within the TCR class.
Yeah, touring car is quite interesting, I think, now, just because they're all settled into the rhythm. It was a little bit more crazy at the start. The incident that we had that some wondered why there was not a safety car, I think, settled the nerves a little bit more as well. It's that cycle of pit stops that will begin maybe in about 15 minutes' time. That will open up. Pure Sims, of course, will be the first to dive down to the lane. Let's talk a bit about the season, though, Lewis, because like we said, it's a short championship, just 4 rounds. Let's talk about, I think, one team that we expected maybe a little bit more from. BMW Team Redline, who have just had no luck, unfortunately, in this championship, even though the car seems to have speed every single round.
Yeah, they've got involved in a few too many incidents. I remember Ryan Barneveld and Johnny Vecchio in the previous round of the championship at Indy. There's been a couple of occasions like that between their two cars. Of course, the 70 Team Redline car that's presently running in third position and the BMW Team Redline car that's running in fifth. I mean, sure, there might be a chance to finish the season on a high, but unfortunately it seems the highest high that it can get around here realistically is a third and fourth. I think there was the changeover at the start of 2022 where we'd always spoken of the Daytona International Speedway on iRacing as being co-anda territory, and I think very much so, of course, in the 24-hour race this became Apex territory, and that is what we are seeing in this race. And so everyone is just fighting over third right now, and that's Redline essentially. I know they wouldn't feel like it because you wouldn't as a racing driver, but a third and fourth here is a 1-2, right? That's as good as it gets around here. You just cannot challenge Apex right now.
Well, you say that, but again, going back to that conversation about BOP, I think a lot of people still think the Porsche is the strongest car. We've said that there are Porsches not inside the top 10, for example, but Apex have taken full advantage of it, that's for sure. On board with Ascari Reno, who's made sure to have a look at us, which is surprising for a Finn to have some eye contact with him. But of course, Team 77, this was the Ferrari that qualified well at Indianapolis but slid backwards. Ferraris come on strong in these last two rounds of the championship, John. I don't know what it is about the 488 Evo, but these Roval hybrid road course ovals seem to suit the playground of the prancing horse.
I love to see the Ferrari in any form of endurance racing, and you know they've had their successes. It's been spectacularly absent in the real world from getting results in long distance GT3 and GT Daytona racing. If you think of the Nürburgring Nordschleife, Spa 24 hours, they haven't always been there, and people don't seem to choose them, and I don't understand why. Here in the e-racing world, in virtual racing, they have been slightly more popular, and clearly people have had the time to do the testing, and right at the moment that car's had a fantastic run out of the Le Mans chicane on the back straight. This is the 77 car we're talking about. Oscar Rin, who is in the Team 77 car, trying to go around Gianni Vecchio in the Team Redline BMW. Vecchio goes a bit defensive early there, trails the brake into turn one, and once again now we've got a, what is that, 5-car train battling for the third step on the box, Lewis.
Yeah, kind of was watching those behind closing in that trio of BMWs, whilst we did have Gianni Vecchio, well we do still have Gianni Vecchio at the front of this train. I was wondering if they were going to be able to catch it. I kind of noticed that Beneke had been closing in with a little bit of assistance of Ryan Barneveld, and I was a bit concerned that potentially Reina Talvar was actually dropping off the rear end of the train. Thankfully, the slipstreams dragged them all back together again. I can't remember what the slipstream rolls off at. I think it's about 1.2 seconds, something like that. I think it's something like that around here. That it's about 1 second, 1.2.
It will start to drop off from there. I think if you're within 1.8 seconds, you will start to feel it. Of course,
wow.
To go to John's point, though, with the Apex cars at the front of the field, this is the battle for the final step of the podium. I don't see why you'd want to make a move. Save fuel. It's the wisest thing to do. Whether you're in that Ferrari or the BMW's chasing behind, just use Gianni Vecchio as the foil for your strategy as it plays out right now. There are some battles going on back in the field, by the way. Hardpoint by Delta Sport and Aspar in their Ferrari, I've noticed, fighting through their through the CrowdStrike traffic, that they've got in front of them. Of course, that's the Hardpoint 99 that's crossed over from the real world in partnership with the Delta Sport sim racing team. Sean Campbell, one of the most eclectic figures you will find in sim racing. He's down in 20th position right now. And Lewis, that was a car that we did see running up towards the front at the end of Indianapolis until things came unstuck.
That's how it goes sometimes. We do know he's a big collector of chairs, though. So
office chairs, to be specific.
There is at least that. I can't remember. I think it was 3 in the background. They said he had more. So good effort. But like you say, this round probably not going quite as well. But I'd still say that as much as we are approaching an hour and 40 minutes done in this race, we are still in the early days. There we go. Boom. 1, 2, 3 at least there. 4 if you account for the one that he's sitting on. And apparently there's more to speak of. He just loves chairs.
Can't see Nicolas Cage's face though right now, which is a bit
That's
of a disappointment. If we're being totally honest, look at focus on his face.
I forgot it's on the back of that seat.
Yeah, I know, exactly. And this is the thing that differentiates the sim from the real world, and it's what a lot of real world drivers have to kind of get used to when they make the transition into some of these sim racing tournaments, John, is the fact that you lose the physical sensation. You become so much more engrossed in what is going on, and in some ways, it is so much more mentally taxing than being behind the wheel of a real car.
Oh, totally agree. The fact that you don't feel right, the only stimulus that you're getting is from what you feel from the wheel and what you can see from your eyes. So these guys at the moment who are battling over 20th position, Sean Campbell and Jonathan Alvarez, who's in behind him in the Aspar Ferrari. So all they can see from the cockpit is looking forward and a little bit to the sides if they've got multi-screen set up, or if you're using VR. So you're not feeling what the car is telling you. Now, that is a huge loss to how you drive the cars. Whether you're driving the cars on the street in the real world and it's pouring rain and you're feeling for a bit of grip, or whether you're on the racetrack and you talk to any full metal real world driver who's jumped into esports, and they will tell you that is the most difficult thing for them to make the transition. And all of the praise that they have for the full-time esports drivers is the fact that they are able to continue to race closely with potential latency and netcode issues, which we all know in this form of racing can rear their heads. But with all of that, to be able to feel what the car is doing without feeling what the car is doing, that's extraordinary. And that amount of concentration. I remember talking to the real world BMW drivers in 2020 when we first started IMSA Pro Series. They were sweating. After, I think those first races were only an hour. They were sweating after an hour. Never mind, as you well know, gents, after 4 hours on the Nordschleife, which is what some people are doing in the 24-hour race, these guys could not believe how hard they'd had to concentrate. Amazing stuff. This is truly epic driving by everybody out here.
Don't forget, by the way, if you're watching on twitch.tv/VCO Esports, you can enable Command Center to take control of your viewing experience right along with the likes of Williams Esports or Bruno Spengler, Maximilian Benecke, and go multi-view. Enjoy full coverage of this race coming up towards 60 minutes left, not just here at Daytona, but across of the 2022 IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship season. We check in with two Porsches, Team 75, of course, in their Spider-Man colors, in front of the MSI Esports Porsche. This is the battle for 8th and 9th, with a 2-second gap back to Carl Janssen, and then one of your Urano Mercedes. That's the one that, of course, has Luca Kita behind the wheel. Remember, we heard that Luca Kita was concerned about maybe some damage or a technical issue. Lewis, he stayed behind the wheel of the car, and they're still up there in the fight for the top 10 after moving forward 4 positions. I'm sure whatever issues there was, maybe just a mental block.
Yeah, it might have been one of those bits early on in the race. It was that first pass through traffic around here, actually, where there was the big bit of drama. But realistically speaking, I think the car was fine. I think it might have just been, like I say, a bit of mental fog, maybe even overheating the tyres and getting those slightly imbalanced. Right now, pace looks absolutely fine, just keeping up with the Williams Esports Razor car that has got itself back inside the top 10 with the final spot in it. And you're absolutely right. Obviously, we do need to talk about track maps. The fact that he does have some in the background, not making any shots towards
Jamie Fluke.
Jamie Fluke. But still, where are they? He still doesn't have them slapped all over his wall, as we are used to with Jamie Fluke. Still no Daytona one on there, though. I want to see one for each track that you're racing at.
Oh.
We've got to spice this up now. I've seen track maps now.
Oh, we do.
Let's get more.
Ferrari, by the way, does leapfrog to the front of the fuel game's over as Team 77 now jump to 3rd in this battle. You got the red line contingent locked in behind Vecchio, Benecke, then Barnavel, Talvar, and that is it in terms of this fight. It's 3rd through 7th that is still in contention here. I don't think any of these teams have done their driver change, though, John. So before 45 minutes, we will see them in.
I think that's very interesting. I was just watching Carl Jansen's car from Luca Kita when we were on board with the Urana Mercedes. He's struggling for rear-end grip now on that. I presume they're double stinting those tyres on that car, and it looked like that number 5, the blue car, was just struggling a wee bit. I'm watching very carefully as we are at 8:45, 8:45 in the morning. I'm watching that track temperature just starting to rise now, and it won't go up massively in the next 1 hour, but it will go up. So putting a new set of tyres on for the last hour or so is a really sensible way to do this. And I've got to say, I'll put my hand up now, I hadn't really thought about this when we were talking about where the strategy would be. But to do 90, 100 minutes from the start of the race on a set of tyres, and then put the new set of tyres on for the second part of the race, that's a really smart way to do this. And I think, guys, that's what most people are going to do. Listen, guys, we're coming down to the last hour. I'm going to let you take over because it's going to get really, really exciting from now. I'm going to sit and watch this and not interrupt you anymore. Thank you for letting me be a part of this. And the last 60 minutes of the season plays out with Arjuna and Lewis right now. Thanks, guys. Have a great off-season.
Thank you so much to John Hindhaugh for joining us for basically 1 hour and 40 minutes, of the racing here at the World Centre of Racing. And that's the thing about all us commentators. We have the best job in the world. We sit down or stand up, depending on what you prefer, and we just talk and talk and talk. And let's be honest, Lewis, we could do this forever. 60 minutes are left to go in this season, though, and my word, what a season it has been. And it is going to be yet another strategy bonanza to close things out. Lewis, I will put you on the spot right now. Apex 98 or 97? Which one's coming out on top?
Yeah, because the thing is that I guarantee they will be free to race when it comes down towards the run towards checker flag, because regardless of which way they finish around, it's first and second in the standings for them. I am gonna... I don't know. It's a random number. You pick the opposite one. I'll go 97. You go 98.
Okay,
there you go, done.
There we go. So either Kevin Ellis Jr. and Alejandro Sanchez will like me, or they'll like you. It depends on which way this is going to go. Battle for third, of course, going to be interesting as well. Let's head down very quickly, though, to do an hourly update. Then we'll talk to Ewan O'Leary because lots of excitement. Let's run down the top 10, starting with your GTD. It's been domination stations once more from the Corby crew. Apex Racing Team, 23 seconds clear at the front of the field, with the 98 leading the 97 on the way, not just to a 1 and 2 in the race, a 1 and 2 in the championship. It's Team 77, though, that lead the train that fights for the podium. And what a train it is. You've got Benecke and Vecchio for Team Redline directly behind in their BMWs. 2 more BMWs in the form of Rainer Talvar, as well as the BS Turner machine running behind with Ryan Barneveld in the mix there, rounding out the rest of the top 10 in this GTD class. It is going to be Team 75 Bernard by SimRC, MSI Esports, and Williams Esports Razor, all locked in a fight of their own. And as we pass by the battle for second in touring cars, Lewis, give us that rundown for touring cars.
Yeah, indeed. Over the recent past, of course, it's a 4 and a bit second lead for Pure Sims at the moment. It has been over that pit sequence, by the way. It was driver swap city. They've all switched over in the category. Of course, Steen Ledger passing over to Ross McFarlane, but Pure Sims doing something slightly different on strategy, taking a lighter tank of fuel into this portion of the race, because they'll have to put in more when it comes to their next pit stop, which won't be too far away. Gal Valero taking over, of course, in the 199 Apex Racing Team car, who has SimRC all over the rear end. They've been bump drafting just a touch to try and close in on the Pure Sims car, but have been unable to do so. R8G and Semper Racing round out the top 5, with R8G being comfortably ahead of Semper Racing in that 108. The 179, though, in company with the other one of the R8G cars in the 188, driven by Stein Bratton at the moment, rounding out the top 6. We've got Winkler, of course, for the Core Sim Racing, CrowdStrike, Arnage Competition, and the Honda Racing HBD, who started out the race with quite a few issues. They've just kept in it. They've kept ticking away at the laps, ticking away at the race, and they find themselves in the final spot inside the top 10.
That's your hourly update and the final hourly update of the season. Let's go down to pit lane and let's talk to Ewan O'Leary. Ewan, the sun is continuing to come up. It is quite bright now on track. conditions are changing, and now we're in that final cycle where drivers and teams are deciding how they want to finish this championship.
Exactly, conditions are changing, but the conditions earlier on were very cool indeed, which has helped these tyres massively. It's helped them get through the day. And now the question really among a lot of the GTD teams is or can we get away without making a couple of tyre changes? How few tyres can we get away with taking throughout this race because of those temperatures? It remains to be seen. I've heard a lot of discussion for Redline as to what they're going to do. No definitive answers from them just yet, and I wouldn't tell you anyway because I'm not allowed, but it's there's a lot of discussion about it, put it that way. In touring car, by the way, SimRC are very pleased with the situation they have at the moment. The title is currently in their hands. The objective for them really in that first round of stops was to try and reduce the group as much as possible. They have reduced it to 3. They think it could be the winning group. They think they could finish 1, 2, 3 as a trio, and that would of course seal SimRC the title. So they're very pleased and very calm about the situation.
Well, and just on cue, Ewan O'Leary stops talking and we've got cars entering pit lane. The Apex Racing teammates at the front dive on in with about 55 minutes to go in the race. And once again, they are ordered in their positions. We did wonder if they're going to be allowed to fight. We'll find out from this point forward. But of course, this is the short field turning itself around. We'll have a new race leader. His name will be Ascari Rene. Teamless for now, but that Ferrari knows what it's fighting for on the podium.
Yeah, we can't wait to see where the Team 77, Team 7 cars, of course, all the COVID drivers are going to end up over the next few weeks, months. It's not often that an entire team in effect disbands through problems outside of their own, meaning that there is just a string of drivers which are just free and available. Now, occasionally we do see a group of drivers move from one team to another. Of course, anyone remembers back at the start of the year between G2 and BS competition, the likes of Arthur Cameron, Gregor Schill and Niels Nyox moving over to the BS competition team, all 3 of them being taken over. That stuff doesn't happen that often. And so to have so many drivers that are just basically just thrown out into the sim racing world, trust me, they are so talented and so fast, they aren't going to be what is, in large air quotes, privateers for very long. They will be picked up by some big teams.
And whoever gets them will be very, very lucky. Hard-working, professional, nothing but good things to say about the former members of Kova Esports. Let's talk about our 2 highlights then as we get ready to dive into the final cycle of pit stops through the field. Not much to talk about, but I think this is the major talking point. 4 wide as GTDs tried to blow past a 3 wide touring car battle. It ended in tears, and Full Send Racing would then get contact with Altus. Triton as well would retire as a result of that. Plenty of incidents. Then it was Urano versus the Monaco Esports number 44 Ferrari. Dylan Shrivens on the recovery drive, nursing damage on that Urano car, working his way forward. Pure Sims and Full Send were 2 of the protagonists, but really it was the Full Send from Full Send, 3 wide into towards turn number 1, and they found themselves towards the podium positions until they ran out of fuel and then were forced to retire from the race. Bump drafting, the name of the game for all of your GTDs, and it's what has allowed these 2 cars, the Apex Racing 98 and 97, to build up a almost 30-second advantage heading into the pit stop cycles once more, while Pure Sims, by virtue of a slightly shorter pit stop, currently leading touring cars, and that gap, crucially, Lewis, has grown to almost 6 full seconds. Now remember, Pure Sims stopped 8 seconds shorter than everyone behind them, so hypothetically they owe us 8 seconds in the box. However, that gap had been down at as low as 3.5 seconds at times. All that Ross McFarlane can do before the cycle of stops is to grow the gap as best he can.
Yeah, just basically got to fire this around the circuit as hard as possible, getting ready for that final stint, for that final stop. Realistically, they're going to double stint this tire, surely, because obviously they went a lot further in the race than what we'd seen from the GTDs. It was way past the hour point for quite a lot of them, up to an hour and 10 minutes, even an hour and 15 minutes for some. Not quite an hour and 15, actually, that is way over the top. But about an hour and 10, realistically, from some of them, meaning that you've got an hour and a half from that point. Now, Daytona's not a particularly incredibly high tyre wear. You do wear them out a fair amount, but it's not like overwhelming. Meaning to the point of, if I were in those touring cars, I'd be sat there thinking, hour and a half on these stinted tyres, might as well just do it. there's no point in really switching over unless you can do the tyre stint at the same time as the amount of fuel that you're going to be putting in, which, I don't think so.
Mark from Beneke there to just back off into turn 1, doing some fuel saving. You will note he does have some track maps over his shoulder. I spot the Nürburgring Nordschleife peeking into the camera shot there. I'm just saying, you're trying to rub it in a little bit more.
Yeah, I am actually. No, I think third broadcast in a row actually.
Yeah, well, you did it enough during. Yeah, you did it enough during DNLS yesterday. Head down to pit lane very quickly because Ewan O'Leary is now scurrying around trying to figure out what's happening with strategy. And Ewan, in that touring car fight, Pure Sims think they're right in the thick of things.
They absolutely do. I thought that they were going to be just, just off the coattails of the draft, actually, when they made their pit stop, because, of course, this one is about to be locked. Well, they're not about to make a stop, really, but when they do eventually make it in quite a while, I thought they were going to be quite a long way down because of the short stop they just took, but they seem to think that won't be the case. They think they'll be right there. They're just mentioning there that they'll be up against Apex Racing Team, SimRC and RAG, which we could have worked out, but, I mean, I didn't think Pure Sims would be there, I've got to say. So it's good to see that they've got confidence in themselves that they can challenge for a podium today.
I think they will be hoping to try and get forward to the win. Of course, Pure Sims owned by multi-time British touring car champion Ash Sutton, and it's not a shock that they have such a strong touring car program as well. You'd maybe argue in terms of the regular big-time teams, Pure Sims may now have the biggest program. This is what I thought would happen. Cars exiting stage left and diving down, trying to maybe think the undercut is the right thing to do. If we're seeing lots of fuel saving from that train of cars, third on back, Lewis, or now, I guess, first on back, and as the Apex duo, of course, have pitted from the race lead. Maybe for the likes of BS Competition, an opportunity for Ryan Barneveld to get out, Bruno Spengler to get in, get up to rhythm, and try and work his way to some better track position.
Yeah, Bruno Spengler, we know his only goal in this race is to keep all 4 tyres completely in contact with the road surface at all times, as we can see over the shoulder of the man himself. Got to be said, like, you're absolutely right. A lot of teams have tried going for an undercut, tried going for a slightly different strategy here at this point of the race. It's exactly what we were talking about earlier on, is that they've effectively started the race with it being 2 hours and 40 minutes, with it being an awkward distance. They've done an hour-long stint at the start, then they've done a 40-minute stint in the middle stint, which they've shared between their lead driver, and then they're passing over to the second driver for the final hour, 50 minutes, etc. So it's where this stint is sort of closer to 50 minutes rather than it going up to the full hour, because the last one obviously was about 50 minutes as well. I like the strategy. I like the idea of it because you're not switching drivers twice, but you're also getting your fast driver in early, and the only other way that you would do it is you would then put your fast driver in later, and sometimes you can already be in a bad situation if you've done that, even though these drivers are all pretty close in times.
So we may see a couple of these cars from this now leading quartet dive in this time around. Kevin Ellis Jr., Jamie Fluke in those Apex Racing Team Porsches, by the way, stopped for around 62 seconds and exited in the same order that they entered. Gianni Vecchio wants to make things happen on pit lane entry here, and he will clear Ascari Rene with confidence and with assertiveness. That is not something you traditionally see, but Gianni Vecchio executed that perfectly.
Yeah, unless he didn't. That is... Oh, no! There is still contact in the pit lane if you're in the fast lane, and Gianni Vecchio has come across that. Contact between himself and Ascari Rene. He's going to have to do a 3,000-point turn, but he's got a lot of damage on the front.
I'm just saying, that is on Ascari Rene. There is no one else that is on. I think the drivers were told in the briefing that they should use the fast lane, and Gianni is rightfully angry here. He had cleared Ascari. Ascari then comes to the left, and I think that is race done, likely for Gianni Vecchio. You can tell the emotion, you can tell the frustration. It says it all, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've just seen another look at that. It's not pretty, and I feel this. Do you know, this is exactly what we were talking about earlier. Team Redline, wow, they've got great pace, haven't they? The luck, though, it isn't there, and I can understand Vecchio being frustrated there, like we've said before. But I will say one thing, right? I'm not saying that he was asking for it, but he was racing properly hard on the entry into pit lane there. And if he wasn't so, and if he'd have just held position, now obviously you're a racing driver, you're never ever going to do that, and so I'm not blaming Gianni Vecchio in any way, shape or form. We'd all go for it if we could, but the fact that he was going for that overtake on the pit entry, that's what's instigated a scenario where he's essentially even remotely alongside another car through the pit lane. Now, yeah, read into that what you will. Either way, for Vecchio, that is just awful luck.
Reiner Talvar will extend furthest of this battle for third, and here's a look at the replay.
Yeah, why is the Sky Arena there?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I know what you mean, but again, your point is right as well, that Gianni Vecchio was always going to do that if he could. It will ultimately come down to what the drivers were told in the briefing, and I have a feeling I know what was said. That's Beneke out, Holtzman in that 71 car, so they're now Redline's sole chance to grab a spot on the podium. 71 has come on strong towards the end of the season, just having a little bit more luck at the end of the day as well. So where is Bruno Spengler on track then? Because of course we're not tracking necessarily, I think, the gap to your race leaders, the Apex Racing team. Although having said that, Lewis, Bruno Spengler's only 3 seconds back from Kevin Ellis Jr. and Jamie Fluke. If we don't see the likes of Holtzman and Spengler fight too hard, could the BMWs be brought back into the mix as the Apex duo will retake the lead, but I don't know by how much, because it's a short stop from Patrick Holtzman.
Yeah, they do also have... Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, they are going to take over the race. Holtzman's done it. He's jumped all of them. But this is going to be very interesting, and I feel bad for Ewan O'Leary, Lorenzo Bondra and all that lot, who's going to be running behind the scenes to try and get everything sorted here. I don't know what's happened with Apex Racing Team. They've gone maybe slightly too aggressive on the fuel strats here. They've just gone for a move on Thomas Tattler at the moment to get up now into third position and fourth, dragging their way through. But we've got Holtzman, who will effectively become the race leader, and Bruno Spengler's not a million miles behind.
So this is where the gamble comes down. We were talking about this earlier with John Heindorf. Patrick Holtzman has done the driver change but has not taken tires. It was a 34.7 second stop. There's basically now a 50-50 chance that Patrick Holtzman has the tire life to get to the end of the race. We'll see how it plays out. Ellis Jr. and Jamie Fluke, of course, have fresh tires to use with their advantage. Exactly how will it play out? Now, does Reiner Talvar respond? Because it should be Phil Denez that takes over in that 96, if I'm remembering correctly. Yep, there we go. Denez in, Talvar out. Would you respond in that 96 camp and do a short pit stop with no tires here, Lewis?
I don't know. I mean, you've got to remember, they're going for second in the championship. They're going to try and make something happen here. They've got to, potentially. And like I say, if you're going to do it, you might as well take a risk. We're currently focused on the Apex Racing team coming through 3 and 4. I am looking at Phil Denez right now to see if he goes up onto the jacks. He doesn't. He continues on. He is leaving the pit lane now. So this could be big for the championship. Ooh, I'm liking it. I'm liking it.
Although you say it's a short pit, it's 39 seconds compared to the 35 for Holtzman. So it is now Redline 71 that leads from BS Turner in the 96. Then the Apex Racing Team duo that have dominated the race so far until this cycle of the pit stops, until about 15 minutes ago. Then Thomas Tattler in the 77 runs in 5th in his Ferrari. Then a bit of a gap back to Bruno Spengler, but what a different race situation than if you were watching about 20 minutes ago here, Lewis.
Yeah, that's exactly the case. With the 2 Apex Racing Team cars, I mean, this is definitely not over for them. They're going to be able to push, they're going to be able to go out there and attack, go out there and, basically do what they've been doing all day. And knowing the speed that they've had all day, I'd say realistically they are still, I'd argue they're still the favourites for this race for a 1-2. The thing is right now, any talk of them fighting is completely out of the window, at least until they've retaken over the race lead, until they've built up a strong enough lead. Then they might start talking about the idea of, right, okay, final 5 minutes, go at it, lads. But right now, just running line astern as they have done for the last 2 hours.
Back down to Ewan O'Leary then with, I think, most of the major pit stops done in this GTD class. We wait for the same to be the case in touring car. Only Pure Sims look to have made their final pit stops of the race. So Ewan, in terms of the 96 and the 71, the previous stint has set up this stint, and of course now it's a very different complexion to the fuel save that they've been doing the last hour or so.
Yeah, it certainly is. So Redline and BS Turner have both managed to get in front of both Apex Racing Team cars as a result of not taking tyres for at any point in this race. I mentioned earlier the cooler temperatures might have helped them save those bit of tyres, or clearly it has done enough to allow those two teams to do that. But the reason why Redline have not only jumped past BS Turner, but also got a 1.7, nearly 2-second margin, is clearly because of the fuel saving that they've been doing throughout this race so far. Their pit stop was, a good, what's that, 4.1 seconds faster. That has given them this lead right now. Is it enough of a cushion for them to sit on to win this race? I'm not convinced, but they've given themselves the best possible chance. And if you've got the draft in the last half an hour at Daytona, then anything can happen.
No track maps for Jamie Fluke. Alex Simpson, if you're listening, we're going to continue piling the pressure onto you until we get them. So, 42 minutes to go. Fresh tires for the Apex Racing Team duo. Lap time last time around, a 1:43.353 for both the 98 and for the 97. They are the fastest cars on the track right now, but we need to get representative lap times down from the 71 and the 96 to really know exactly how things are going to play out. Let's go talk about touring cars very quickly though, Lewis, and let's talk about championship situations. Pure Sims think they're in with a shout of being on the podium. SimRC know that all they need is a podium in what may be a 4-car fight for 3 positions.
Yeah, and that is only the case dependent on where the 108 finishes. If they finish just a single position behind the 108, honestly, for them, the Apex Racing Team, obviously, yeah, you go battle for the race win, but the Apex Racing Team winning, Pure Sims winning, doesn't matter. They don't care. It's just about the 108. That is the only car they care about in this race, and that's the only car they should care about. That's the one they have to cover when it comes to that championship. Right now, they're ahead of them, so everything's looking dandy. And like you say, is that RAG car winning? Is that likely? We're not so sure right now. The only question, the only bit that might pour maybe a little bit of negativity on SimRC's parade at the moment is that whilst the Elantra looks good, and whilst it certainly has looked faster through a majority of the season than the Honda Civic, that Honda Civic's long run pace, particularly around here, has actually looked really, really good. And that is the only part that I would be slightly concerned about, is that potentially that Honda Civic might actually start attacking later on. And if that does happen, well, who else is in a Honda Civic? The Pure Sims car, they are also in a Honda Civic. The RAG, they're in a Honda Civic. So it's kind of like that could open up a can of worms they maybe don't want to get involved in. Meanwhile, Apex is just struggling a little bit with connection problems there.
It's not a good sign. Those that know the Coanda team facilities worries with internet connection will maybe be a little concerned. Lights flash from the 199 to get the Mirror Esports car, a lapped car, out of the way. Gap between the 71 and the 96 has come down to 1.3 seconds, but Apex are within the draft of BS Turner, and it is now a 4-car choo-choo train at the front, with Tumas Tatsler well and truly being dropped in this fight. And at least based on lap time, it doesn't look as though there's going to be much that the front two will be able to do. They are fighting for that 3rd step on the podium, as it seems right now. 2 hours done, 14 minutes left in this race. Let's head back down to Ewan O'Leary to check in with touring cars, because the Apex Racing Team 199, Ewan, is trying to break away at the front of the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Kieran Harrison just commenting there as they came over the line in quite a relaxed way, that he just noticed that it was a really, really quick lap, and that's mainly because Gael Valero is towing them all around. That's all very close. Yes, Apex Racing Team basically trying to increase the pace right now, and it has worked. Kieran Harrison, just as they went off screen there, made a mistake into turn 1. He's lost that 2nd place to RAG Esports, and a 1.5 second gap has opened up. So can Gael Valero use that to get away, quite possibly? Wait and see on that. But the increase of pace certainly has worked on that most recent lap.
A full Ewan O'Leary there, considering how much the Apex Racing Team were flying their way through. I was going to say traffic, but it definitely wasn't. That was the BS Turner car that was out wide going through T1.
Yeah, it was nicely done, and now that BS Turner car will try and use the draft to follow Apex as much as possible to close back in on Patrick Holtzman. I'm trying to remember who the 2 drivers were at the end of the BMW Sim GT Cup race at Sebring earlier this year, when we of course saw Team Redline Red and I think it was just BS Competition, not BS Turner, have contact on the final lap. Wasn't it Phil Denez and Patrick Holtzman?
I don't remember.
I'm almost 100% sure. I know that was back in March.
Because obviously, I'm pretty sure it was Holtzman and Denez. I'm pretty sure. And it was quite a bit of pushing and shoving, shall we say. Oh, it was exciting. Very, very exciting. What a final lap it was. But also, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was them too. I don't think they'll probably remember, actually. Oh, it was you, was it?
Yeah, I was going to say, they've probably done enough races at this point. They're just like, oh, that was a race that happened? Okay. But I definitely remember that, is for sure. You saw the bump draft, the shot to the rear bumper there for Jamie Fluke on Kevin Ellis Jr., and they do it in the right way. I do also remember back at Daytona, the iRacing Daytona 24 Hours that we had in January, Lewis, that we saw BS competition using the bump drafting quite a lot. And I explicitly remember, I think it was Ryan Barneveld who went on social media and said, at Turner Motorsports, you should try this. We've tested it in the sim and we know it works.
Yeah. Scientifically speaking, it's 100% accurate. Of course, yeah, sometimes you don't really want to be trying this in real life, but in the sim where there is no real risk of it going too wrong, and by too wrong I mean actually injuring someone, you might as well. I've seen plenty of clips of it quite literally going quite wrong. We were even sent one before we went live between a certain two high-profile drivers that were bump drafting around here and ending in a pretty large crash. You've got to, you can't just go and just randomly start bump drafting in the middle of those. You have to know how to do it, and that is why these teams, they practice it time and time again, and you'll actually see it. Well, you won't because you don't see their practice sessions, but I promise you, when they go into the practice sessions and whatnot, they will also bump draft with other cars that aren't their own, that aren't, you know, they'll go, oh well, we've got a couple of Porsches, let's bump draft with those. But it'll be like, let's bump draft with the BMWs, let's bump draft with the Lamborghinis, let's try and figure out, is there any major differences? Here comes a switch for the race lead though.
Nice and easy. Holtzman does not even fight this. Again, he is concerned with one thing and one thing alone, and that is that number 96 car who is on that same strategy as him. About, what was that, 15 minutes, 20 minutes of Apex not leading, and now they resume their stations at the front of not one, but two of our classes as we jump on board with Patrick Holtzman. The gap back to Dinez is under 1 second, so draft will play its part from this point forward. Patrick Holtzman, remember, 4 seconds shorter in terms of fuel compared to BS Turner. Now, of course, he was saving a lot more fuel in the previous stint, Lewis, but the question will still be, is there any concern that they are slightly too close to that magic number?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Again, they'll be running the numbers behind the scenes. They'll know exactly where they are. They'll know what they need to save. They'll know what they need to do. They're not new to this, right? And they've raced at the highest level. All of these teams have raced at the highest levels for not exactly the last 6 weeks. They've been invited to this championship because they are the very best teams that we have to offer, with a specific exception, Porsche, but we won't talk about those, it's fine. They are at the tippy top of what's possible, really, from them. So when it comes to the strategy and whatnot, they're pretty on it. So I don't suspect there'll be any major issues late on. The only issue, really, is that, once again, we are back to talking about the battle for third, because Apex have just gone, yeah, actually, do you know what? We're not going to have a battle for the race. We're not going to have a battle for the race league with any other colours. It's going to be Apex on Apex.
On board with Phil Dinez. It was, by the way, Dinez and Holtzman that came to blows on the final lap of that race at Sebring. So there is some history, but these are two very top-level drivers who will show each other just enough respect. You can see Apex has cleared off already, so there is no draft at this point, which, if I'm Phil Dinez, means I'm just going to sit here for 32 minutes and 30 seconds, and then in the final laps I might go for it. But he's trying to use some traffic as a pick past the Apex racing car that leads in touring car. Dinez using the banking and running the outside line to try and challenge for third.
Yeah, good move trying to get around there. He's got to send it inside by side of the corner. Dinez going around the outside, but the inside line will prevail, at least for now, going through the chicane ever so slightly up towards the International Horseshoe at turn 4. Down the inside, Dinez just off the Apex, hooks it up nicely, powers it off the corner. A little bit of a slide as he was pushing all of that power down onto the road. And it is BS Turner up into third. Phil Dinez channeling his hero, Sean Campbell, by sticking a chair in the background and getting on with the race. What a lad.
When you said channeling his hero, I thought you were going to start talking about the crotch belt that, of course, lives inside every single one of the Turner Motorsports machines. Fantastic motorsports follow, if I do say so myself, not just because he showered me with compliments, my sim racing commentary, which is the easiest way to a man's heart. 32 minutes and 50 seconds to go. Do you fight if you're the Apex cars at the front? Because here's the reality. It doesn't matter which one of them wins. They're going to finish 1 and 2 in the championship, no matter which direction it goes. The question is, the 98's got 2 victories already. The 97's got 1. How are they playing this one out?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I would say, honestly, if it were me running things behind the scenes, I trust the drivers. They are great teammates. They'll always give themselves plenty of room or whatever. But also because we want to put on the show. With the points the way they are, obviously BS Turner and the Apex 97 were very, very close coming in. As they are still pretty close, but with them being first and second, it doesn't really matter which way round the 97 finishes. It can win, it can finish second. It's presently running in second, and it still has second in the championship. I would say, though, if I was running things behind Apex, I'd be like, right, the final 5 minutes, if you've built up 10, 15 seconds, just go for it. Just go for it. Like, whatever that means between the two of you, whether that means the 97 is going to back off on the slipstream and then punch into it again, go for it. If you want to make it side by side, go for it. That's what I would say.
Well, the other Apex car is doing something, and that's coming down to pit lane. Gael Valero in. Don't expect a driver change. Don't expect Nicole Foggy to get into the car. Not up on the jacks either, because you can do fuel and tires at the same.
Spot.
We saw that plenty. We talked about that yesterday in the Open Wheels 500-mile race, but no tires, and so that means I think we're going to see at most 30 seconds of fuel. It's 22.9 seconds to stop for Gael Valero. Now, where is Ross McFarlane and Pure Sims in this equation? Still a long way for Valero to go before he can release himself off the limiter, as Ross McFarlane is exiting turn number 4 of the banking.
Yeah, he's going into the start-finish straight now. There you can see Ross McFarlane in that 116 going through turn 1 on the inside line. This is going to be the Apex Racing team hanging on from that position. But of course, they still think there's a decent amount of pace in that 116. Obviously doing something slightly different on the strategy, but yeah, not really working out. Just to clarify, by the way, I was digging into this yesterday a fair amount. Pure Sims and Apex, not teammates. Very similar liveries, not teammates. Nothing to do with each other, just the same colours on a very suspiciously similar livery. Thankfully, they've picked different cars in this, though, so at least there's that.
And it's not as bad for those that are wondering why Lewis is complaining about this. Head on over to the VCO Esports YouTube channel, where I believe there is a full race from the Esports Racing League, which has BS Competition and Apex Racing Team, and just 3 cars of each, and they basically looked identical. And I was so glad that I did not have to commentate on that one, and instead Lewis.
Twice.
Yeah, Lewis and Luke Crane had to suffer through that twice, which is absolutely incredible. There is Pure Sims back onto the banking. There's Apex already on the banking. Yeah, the lines are a little different, but yeah, I mean, they're basically the same colors. And the other one that's common, of course, that you and I complain about is black and red.
Yeah, but I will say with this, I mean, one thing that I do appreciate is that Pure Sims has put the highlighted yellow, almost like a Valentino Rossi yellow, which is great, apart from the fact of what's that on the rear wing of the Apex car. It's the same colour. Oh, it's so frustrating. Which is a shame, because I actually love both liveries. Well, it's the same livery, isn't it? I think it looks great, but they do look remarkably similar. Both of them also showing remarkably similar pace, and the fact that they're both going very well around this circuit.
Yeah, they are indeed. By the way, BS Turner, that number 96, is somewhat close on drive time, by the way. It will come down, I think, to those final laps. Drive time calculated not from when he gets into the car or whatever. It's just calculated based on the lap time. So it's going to be one of those post-race decisions that decides the potential for second in the championship. See how it goes. 30 minutes left on the board, as BS Turner still leads that BMW Team Redline car in the fight for third in GTD. Here's the cars that currently lead in Touring Car, albeit they both owe us a pit stop. It's Valentin Mandanuk in front of Kieran Harrison in the Hyundai Elantra TC machine. And of course, a successful year for both drivers in so many ways, but Harrison has really established himself as maybe one of the 2 best drivers in this iRacing touring car community, along with his teammate Corin Tengunes, after not just winning so many private championships this year, but the 2 of them running 1 and 2 in the Hyundai NE Global Festival, and now with 2 victories in this IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship.
Yeah, took a victory in the opening round of the championship, a victory in the previous round, also looking to grab another one. Obviously, they're going very, very long in this stint comparatively, as we saw them on the first stint as well, going longer than those that have stopped recently. Is the 108 coming in now? No, I don't believe so. Again, the fuel saving gains are completely afoot. It means their stop here, when they do eventually make it, is going to be incredibly short. But of course, as I've said time and time again in this broadcast, the 176, they don't need to win. The only car they need to cover is the car that is directly ahead of them. And by cover, I do not mean beat. I mean, they could sit here when the 108 pits. They leave the pit lane at the same time. They sit behind the 108. They come across the line directly behind them. They win the championship, right? It is honestly as simple as that, which is actually really difficult because they're very, very fast. But from a realistic, strategic point of view, there isn't much the 176 has to do, apart from, to some degree, put ego to one side. Don't go for anything too crazy. Sure, go for a move, but it's the moment that you go, no, I mean, this is my champion run. I've got to win this final race, the championship. That is where things can come unstuck very, very quickly.
8 seconds, by the way, splits Apex from Pure Sim. So RAG and SimRC don't think we'll be too concerned about the Honda of the 116, at least as it plays right now. Back down to Ewan O'Leary, because of course that championship mindset is not just something we'll talk about here as a hypothetical, but Ewan, SimRC is trying to apply that to the rest of these 26 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. They're both very relaxed about the situation, just agreeing with each other that sticking to third place is probably the best idea for them at the moment in the situation that they think they're going to come out in. Let's not forget, these two were 3 seconds behind Gael Valero before these pit stops, or before Valero came in. So if you put them 3 seconds behind Valero on the road right now, that gives them quite an advantage over Ross McFarlane and Ola Steinbratton, which is what they need, really. It's what SimRC certainly need in this race for the title. So they're agreeing that sticking to third is a good idea, and the pit stops are going to be beginning right now.
Here they come. They juke past the double yellows. Don't think we'll see drama like we do with Vecchio and Rene here, but their pit boxes are much earlier, so they can't afford to make the mistake that I have done before in an iRacing 24 Hours of Daytona, which is miss your pit box in the first cycle of pit stops, because boy, when you're that first box, you better know where you are. So the Gael Valero driven 199, Lewis, is already into turn 3 on the banking and building up the speed.
Ooh.
It's short stops across of Harrison and Mandenok. 18.2 for the 176 compares to a 23-second stop for Gael Valero.
Yeah, and it's also the position switch. Harrison out ahead of Valentin Mandenak. This is going to be pretty close on the exit of pit lane, but SimRC might actually gather themselves the race lead. We can see SimRC there, just in the background a shot. That will be Valero coming through in the 199. Now they get to release the pit speed limiter. You'll see him coming through in the background a shot. These two, they came into the pit lane 1-2. They leave the pit lane first and second as well, ahead of Gael Valero, and that is because of the lack of fuel comparatively that they had to put in.
And so Ross McFarlane and Pure Sims thought they may be in with a chance of a podium, but they are a full 10 seconds off your leader, and Valentin Mandenok is almost a second off of Harrison. It's just within that drafting range, and he should be able to close if that traffic, the GTD cars behind, don't interfere, as they'll loop left and work back onto the oval here at the Daytona International Speedway. It will actually grow very slightly, but again, Mandenok will get that draft and it will close back up as well. Head down to Ewan O'Leary again about this touring car fight, because we thought it may be a three-way fight, but I think the Apex 199 Ewan has recognized that they may be out of this one.
Well, I'm not entirely sure. We saw the pace they had earlier, so if they can reproduce that, then they'll be right back in it. But for the moment, it's very spread out. The three touring cars are more than a second apart from one another. They're not getting any drafts from each other, so they will need a bit of traffic to get back involved. But I do just fear for Gael Valero that if Kieran Harrison and Valentin Mandenok get together, then maybe they're going to both work together to get away from him entirely. So we'll see what happens there. But you've got to say that this has gone absolutely perfectly for SimRC in terms of the fuel saving that they were able to do there to get that shorter pit stop and get themselves a 1 second lead here on the final race. Well, it's a dream for them.
They mentioned that we had that iRacing Roar before the Daytona 24, which was a 2.4-hour race with GT4 cars as well as these touring car machines. I believe it was Kieran Harrison that came out on top, but it's not going to be easy. Mandenok has started to close that gap down into these closing stages. Let's check back in with GTD battles. Not really much to talk about at the front of the field. BS Turner and BMW Team Redline aren't really going at it back and forth. However, just outside of the top 20, teams trying to finish the season off with some momentum, Lewis. The likes of Maniti in the 78 fighting with Urano Data Group, Vad Kiminchev behind the wheel there. And behind these guys as well, further 20 seconds back, the two Monaco Esports Ferraris are trying to end their season on a high as well.
Yeah, I'm surprised we've had so many retirements, to be honest, inside the category. I hadn't even realised that we've had 5 retirements just from the GTD category alone, along with 3 further ones inside the touring cars. Like I say, we've not had a safety car in this race, and we weren't expecting to be perfectly honest. But I wasn't expecting to see that many retirements either. Full Send, Impulse, and the other Full Send car, both of them retiring from the race. Of course, we saw one of the issues for the 185. Or it might have been the 158 that actually was the one that was wrong with the issues. The one at 85 actually ran out of fuel. In the GTD, Arnage, Altus, Biela, Triton, and the number 70 Team Redline car are all also retirements for the race. They're not going to be ending the seasons on a high. To be fair, no one outside of the top 20 really are either, but you've got to end the season with a few things. Number 1, beating your teammate. Number 2, great photographs. Let's get after it, lads. We've got the Monaco Esports cars here very, very close.
It's good to have them both back in the field after missing round number 3. Don't forget, by the way, iRacing's Black Friday sale is now available to all. It's 50% off new memberships, 25% off your renewals, whether they are 12 or 24 months. Head on over to iRacing.com to get started, or iRacing.com/Black Friday to learn more about this special Black Friday sale. It's always when I end up putting another 2 years onto my iRacing count, and 2 years later when it rolls around again, the same thing happens. Touring car lead, by the way, RAG and SimRC are fighting back and forth. Traffic has affected it very slightly, and into the International Horseshoe, Lewis. It's RAG that hits the front once more. Apex right in the drafting queue as well.
Yeah, I was going to say it was just at that point, like I was saying yesterday in some of the races that we were talking over. I spent way too much time with you yesterday. In the form of these slipstream battles, when they're around that 1.5 to 1 second region, it's like an elastic band, and you kind of think of it, it's stretching out, and it might just close back in, and we're seeing that straight away from Harrison. Boom, down the inside. SimRC take over the race lead straight away with immediate effect, and it is absolutely 3 for the race lead. But that elastic band, it had one of 2 choices: either compress, collapse, come straight back together again, or snap and allow Harrison to step away from the entire field. Thankfully for us, for the next 20 minutes, trust me, it has compressed, it has come together, and we're going to see a fantastic fight.
This is going to be great, and I think Gael Valero has already on the radio to his teammates promised a 3-wide photo finish. Lorenzo Bonda's listening in and laughing so much because apparently Gael Valero is doing play-by-play commentary on the race as it goes right now, and I tell you what, he is in the perfect spot to watch all this. I will correct myself. It wasn't Kieran Harrison, by the way, that won the iRacing Roar before. It was Corentin Gunes. It was Harrison that was involved in the big crash that we had out of Turn 4. Very similar to what we saw here today. BS Turner, BMW Team Redline, by the way, they are also fighting back and forth through some traffic. Plenty of fighting breaking out with 20 minutes left. The sun is up at the World Center of Racing, and the focus is on the touring car lead.
Yeah, it's very close. You can see it at the top there. It's still switching over between SimRC and RAG. SimRC out wide just a touch. You got the Apex Racing Team car sat there again. This is all good for the SimRC machine. Even if they finish in 3rd position behind that 199, if the 108 wins, they'll still be good on points. We can see here on board with the new commentator himself, as he is sat there chilling, relaxing, having a good time, to be honest. Gael Valero just chatting about the racing ahead. We should drag him into the commentary booth whilst he's doing it and let him talk over this race. It sounds all right, actually.
I was going to say, who needs to listen to us? I mean, why not listen to the Mr. Apple himself as he works to the inside of the corner? He just looks like he's having a fun time, which I think is important. Word from Ewan O'Leary, by the way, is SimRC is wondering if RAG is actually driving intentionally a little bit slower here, just trying to cause a little bit more chaos, and that's why we are seeing so much side by side as they ramp out of turn number 6 again to the low side. SimRC will take the point again.
Yeah, there is that potential. You can be slowing them down. Like it makes sense if they have aspirations of the title. They need to have other cars being a part of this fight. That was an enormous bump draft. I mean, we're at the right track for it. That's absolutely fine. But a big slap from the rear end there. Of course, Gael Valero making it stick. I think he just wants to see these two remain side by side as we're going to get them through the bus stop. Still just there. Harrison had to back out. Valentin Manilak takes back over the race lead. Ross McFarlane has closed in around about a second second in the very, very recent past. And again, the Apex Racing team, Gaio Valero, he's pushing the car that's going slower. I just think he just wants to see these two side by side.
I think he's just trying to set us up now for the 3-wide photo finish at this point. I have no doubt that Kieran Harrison is absolutely hating this right now, but to that point, why not just pull down left, brake, and let these two fight by themselves? We said it earlier, I will bring it up again. Valero will back out of this for the time being. And whoa, that is a aggressive lunge to the inside from Valentin Mandanok. And without a shadow of a doubt, the tempers are starting to flare, and the tempers are flaring over the championship here in the touring car class as the Williams Esports Mercedes has got an angry swarm of touring cars to work his way past.
That was a mega send from Valentin Mandanok. I mean, as a touring car driver myself, I absolutely love that. I say, I feel for Harrison here. I can understand that level of stress he's going through. Got a bit of GTD traffic coming through in the Mercedes-AMG Williams car coming through. There is a send back through. Coming in, of course, the R8G man of Mandanok, who we're on board with right now. I think you're absolutely right. They're losing time. Hand over fist to McFarlane. Once again, a massive send from Mandanok. Oh, he sends it in too hard though, and there's contact between the two. It's too much. If I'm in that 176, you're absolutely right. Back out of it. Let the two fight. Just don't get involved. What did we say earlier? They had accepted third position. They were like, let's just finish in third. The worst thing that you can do is let ego take the better of you, and I think that's almost what we're seeing here. They're fighting too hard with R8G. Let them go. Let them battle between themselves. I understand R8G might be trying to slow them down, but still, just let them fight with Apex.
Yeah, I will also say that R8G are a team that has complained about aggressive driving from others in the past in the Esports Racing League, but I think they have maybe taken that to heart because they know what's on the line and they are going to maybe start to be a little bit more physical right now, which, again, I can appreciate. And to some degree, that's what touring cars are meant to allow you to do, Lewis. These are cars in which rubbing is not just racing, banging is racing.
Yeah, I mean, I completely disagree with that, I will say. Touring car racing is still a non-contact sport. But, you know, there is a little bit of rubbing in there. You can't just slam someone out of the way, though. So that move, like I say, we're closing in a couple that might be just over the line. But right now, all's fair in love and war. I think for Harrison, just needs to, again, put that to one side. Just, yes, it's frustrating. Yes, it's irritating. But right now, we're back in that perfect spot. The 199's leading. They're trying to fight over the race lead. The 108 is second. They'll be focused forwards, almost less so backwards. And if you're in that 176, you've got 7 seconds to the car behind. 7. You aren't going to lose that in 15 minutes. Not to Ross McFarlane, not at this point. Unless... Oh, no, okay. I was going to say safety car. Unless...
Yeah, fortunately that is not a broken McLaren MP4-12C at the controls with Carbon SimSport, but I was literally, Lewis, we were talking about it. I was just about to bring up what happens if we get a safety car, and right on cue we get that moment where some may have thought it was an inevitability. We'll get a look at what happened, I have no doubt about that one, but fortunately we've had 2 major issues so far today, one on the banking, and then one, of course, at the start-finish line. Let's take a look at this here. It involves the CrowdStrike Mercedes.
Oh, solo.
Self-inflicted, over-jinx, over-committed.
Yeah, poor guy. Carbon SimSport there, just going for it. For Bovey there, just, I mean, like I say, pulling out too aggressively, steering too aggressively, rear end saying, look, son, I don't have that kind of grip, not at these speeds. And yeah, it just went. I don't have a little bit of a concern that I thought Mandanok was actually trying to slow Harrison down a little bit too much as we're right on board in that instant. You'll see. I mean,
weight transfer just looked weird.
Yeah, on it, I will say, on board with that, it did not look like he turned too aggressively. That seems rough. That's just tyres, old tyres.
Yeah, that looks very, very weird. So Valero, Mandanok side by side in towards turn 1. Steen Ledger, by the way, out of his stint in that Pure Sims 116. He's done the math and he believes that if R8G wins, SimRC, if R8G wins the race and SimRC is in 4th, is enough for R8G to grab the championship. But as much as these guys are fighting and losing each other time, Pure Sims and R8G's 188 had been gaining some ground. In the last few laps, that gap has opened back up to 7 full seconds. So I don't think if you're R8G's 108 car, you can feasibly expect with 13 minutes to run for the 116 and the 188 to close 7 seconds to join the party.
yeah, like I say, you're kind of treating this as basically as the 3-horse race, and so kind of that relieves a little bit of pressure. If there was a 4th and a 5th car in this train, I would be terrified if I was SimRC. The fact that there is 3, the perfect number for them, especially considering the 108 is not leading. There is no need to stress right now. They've had that bit of drama. They've had that bit of. I mean, it was exciting from our point of view. But that's past us now. All I will say, if I was in their boots, is we are not done with drama. There is 12 minutes and 20 seconds left of this race and this championship, and there is the team ahead of them that want to win the title. There is going to be drama on the horizon. This is not going to be a perfectly clean run to the checkered flag. You could see behind Pure Sims and RHG sat there, the 116 and the 188, nearly 8 seconds behind. Those two probably won't fight too hard at the moment, because I think the 188 will try and push the Pure Sims, so that if these 3 do fight, they can join that fight. And of course, the RHG cars will try and help each other, getting past the SimRC to get them out of position and hopefully win the title.
I feel like we're just going to see this now, lap after lap, until we see the checkered flag. It does seem as though if you are behind out of the bus stop, you will get enough draft if you time it right to lead at the line. This is where you download the data. You test out various things out of that corner, right, Lewis? And then you know what you need to do come the final lap. Because, for example, as Valero has a bit of a moment there, and here comes the jink from the RAG car. Whoa. I thought he was content to ride in second, but Mandanok will tag the back end of Valero, who uses front-wheel drive to point it back in a straight line. However, continuing to build, RAG know what they still need to do to grab the championship.
Yeah, I mean, we'd need to see that one from above, to be perfectly honest, from the helicam, because I think Gar Valero is going straight on the attack again of Harrison. But it's whether there was, again, an overlap, whether that was too aggressive again from Valentin Mandanok, a second very, very aggressive dive. But also, did he drift off of the apex? I think that's the important bit, is I think the 108 went in too hot, went basically off of the racing line, then into the side of the Apex Racing Team car. I don't think Gar Valero necessarily pinched too much. Let's take a look at this. So there's the aggressive send down the inside. Kind of, I will say, Guile Valero is closing it potentially a touch late and reacting to the 108 rather than being proactive and holding it down to the white line as a defensive move in that braking zone. For me, honestly, I'd say that's racing. That's rough, but it's racing.
I agree with you, by the way, when you said that touring cars are a non-contact sport. I agree, but these cars are just built in a way that they can take contact, right? We were commentating on some Indy cars yesterday. You cannot race an Indy car the same way that you race a touring car, fundamentally. So that's why when I say these are cars that are allowed to bang and to rub a little bit more, it's what we see. SimRC's doing the right thing here. Go up high, lift off the throttle, and slot back into third. It is as simple as that right now. Your Apex Racing leaders are starting to close in on them, by the way, as they have to go 3 wide, navigating past a battle on track. Aspar and CrowdStrike are fighting, and Apex trying to navigate their way through safely. Nervy moments, no matter where you look, no matter who you are.
Yeah, like I said, that is smart stuff there from Harrison, just to back off, back down. I think points-wise, again, they're still perfectly safe. Meanwhile, Aspar going onto the grass behind them, trying to lap all this traffic. It's getting a little bit sketchy. Harrison's way out wide and is saying, I don't want any of this, thanks. Off you go, lads. Aspar comes through. Same with the 2 Apex Racing Team cars that are leading 1 and 2 in the GTD category. All just going out into the grass ever so slightly to try and use up as much as the track as possible. Meanwhile, Gar Valero's just sent off Mandanok.
He really did squeeze and escort Mandanok off into the grass, but good car control. Now, there's a danger here for SimRC, right? Because the best thing to do would be to just let the top 2 go. Let them continue to fight and break the toe. But you can see that Pure Sims and that 116 are now only 5 seconds away from this leading gaggle. Yes, their tires are a little bit more worn and have gone through a little bit more hardship. But the more they fight, the more these 3 cost each other time, hand over fist. It is bringing into the equation the likelihood that SimRC are not just thinking about finishing on the podium, but finishing inside of the top 5 spots. 8 minutes and 28 seconds to go. Let's head back down to Ewan O'Leary and just check in what is going on behind the scenes in this crazy 3-way tussle.
Yeah, it's so tense listening into SimRC at the moment. It's quite unbelievable, really. Clearly very worried about Pure Sims and the other RHG car catching up. Kieran Harrison reporting at the International Horseshoe on this lap that they are actually catching by quite a lot, and the gap does now dip below 6 seconds. They're doing the maths between themselves. What can they get away with? How many points can they afford to lose? Well, not many is the story, and that's why they're so nervous about all the battling that's going on right now. But they have put in a protest, by the way, for one of those dives by RHG.
Sorry to cut you off there, but Lewis and myself have realized just how close this is. If RHG win and SimRC finish in third, SimRC grabs the championship, Lewis, by 1 single point.
Yes, indeed. We knew it was going to be close. We knew it was going to come down to a couple of positions if that was the case, but we didn't realize it was going to be a single point. Apparently, we're idiots in the commentary booth coming from Ewan O'Leary. He's just throwing us under the bus. Yes, of course we know it's close, Ewan. Of course we know it's close. We've been saying that we know that the SimRC car has to finish third, has to be on the podium, but I didn't realize it was going to come down to the single point. It's going to be very tight, and you're absolutely right. If McFarlane, if Steinbratton can close in, that is where the pressure comes, and that is why the pressure comes, because it's just a single point. One more position lost and they are done. That is all 6 weeks work thrown straight into the bin, kind of, even though it's still finished second, which is great, but yeah, it's in the bin.
I don't know about you, Lewis, but as soon as I saw that -1 pop up, my heart rate jumped by about 20 beats per minute.
Yeah, that was. I mean, as soon as you see a championship with 1,000 points, and then you see -1 as Monaco. Is that Monaco Esports having a bit of an issue?
44, Elias Riker, yeah, who's had an issue, and hopefully it's just by himself. Now, remember, he was fighting with his teammate in the 88, so it was basically the battle of the Monacos in their Ferraris. Check back in, though. 6 minutes to go. A potential 1-point championship win. SimRC. Now I know why they are so nervous.
Oh, no.
Into the corner, self-spin. Is there a contact with his teammate? I think there was a little bit.
Yeah, that was. No, I think it might have actually been in the rear end, letting go. That was a bit rough. I think it's just like I say, grip going a bit low. We saw obviously issues earlier on from Carbon Simsport and whatnot. At this point in the race, we've got a few cars struggling for grip out there as we head into the final few laps of this season. We've got a battle for the race lead in the touring cars, and of course it is for the title as well. RHG trying to take it down to just a single point, that they'll be arrears of that SimRC car that sat in third. They're trying to take over the race lead, trying to finish off the season in perfect form. Meanwhile, BS Competition slotting through the middle.
Yeah, that's the 89, Bruno Spengler behind the wheel there. He is no stranger to taking risks in traffic, that is for sure. Side by side, RHG and SimRC will now fight with a 7/10 buffer up to Gao Valera, of course. That will come back down. Let's quickly talk about GTD points as well, because Phil Denez and Patrick Holtzman don't really look like they have been fighting too hard. That may be a fight that escalates on the final lap, but regardless of how it switches out, the 97 does look on course, Lewis, with 5 minutes to go, to grab second in the points in front of BS Turner and make it an Apex Racing team 1 and 2.
I do like the fact that it is not only the 1, 2, 3 in the championship, it's the same 1, 2, 3 in the race, but I also do really like that it's 98, 97, 96. There's something that feels right about that. It's spot on with the money, but I don't know if it's going to be 98 ahead of 97 when it comes towards the line. If I were again in the Apex Racing team, it'd be now. I'd be like, okay, lads, you can start fighting. There's 5 minutes left to go. We've got 3 or 4 laps.
I may have got a message saying that.
They won't.
Yeah, they may not.
Well, I'm not a fan of Apex Racing team anymore.
I pleaded my case. I pleaded my case to say that out of the bus stop on the final lap. That's all we ask for. That's all we ask for. A mile of a drag race will be entertained. That's for sure.
Let's be honest, the Apex Racing team, we've not received Apex Racing team shirts. They're not going to fight at the end of this race. And also, there's still no track maps on Jamie Fluke's wall. Now, I will accept even printing out track maps and sticking them just on A4 and just sticking them behind them. Or even just a bit of pen, just a Sharpie, and just like draw the track and stick it on there. I'd accept that. It doesn't have to be these fancy 3D ones with all the undulation and camber and everything. I don't need to see any of that. I just want to see some pretty track maps on the wall. So we'll get on it, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, if you get the track maps, immediately we'll have to find something else to talk about when it comes to Jamie Fluke and the Apex Racing team. I hope you're aware of that.
No, I'll still just be like, what's the next track map? Every round. Every single round.
I'm just saying, by the way, next time Kevin Ellis Jr. feels the need to call me at 2 a.m. in the morning, maybe he should just wander down to the room where the rigs are and draw some track maps on the wall. Good idea. I loved it. Cool. So 3 minutes to go. A fight in one class where we know it's going to be fireworks, and we know it's for the championship. A fight in another class where it's a team at the front that continues their remarkable form of the championship and looks set to make it 4 wins in 4 races. I mean, the consistency of that 98 and the 97, a bit of bad luck here and there. Even the 98 has not been impervious. You think back to the contact with the wall they had at Indianapolis, but regardless of what car that Apex have been in 2022, it started at Daytona, like you said, dethroning Coanda as the kings at the World Center of Racing. This will put the cap on what has been a blockbuster 2022 for the team, and I know Kevin Ellis Jr. doesn't have any more races for the rest of the year, so hopefully some well-earned time off as well.
Yeah, at least until the whole circus starts again at the very beginning of January. We'll have to wait and see on that one how much we see them in action in 2023. I'm going to say a lot. They also want to end the season in perfect way with a 1-2 in GTD and also a win in the touring cars. Not going to get the championship, but that win might just slip through their fingers because once again, here comes RHG to take over the race lead at the line. Now that could be a nice little dress rehearsal for 2 laps time on the penultimate lap of this race, and if they do it out of the bus stop like they did then, it would be RHG taking the victory. Yeah,
and I think again it's now just about at least getting the win and seeing what they can do. SimRC are hanging back and being as smart as they can be, doing all that they need to do. Another send to the inside at the International Horseshoe by Mandanok, and more contact between those 2 cars. Valero's going to try and stick his nose alongside, but as they fly in towards the kink, Mandanok marginally in front, but continuing to fight side by side. Will Mandanok be off in the grass once again? No, this time he's given enough room and enough overlap to try once again into the second hairpin in the infield.
Yeah, super bit of racing here between these 2, trying to get a Honda victory, of course, against 2 Elantras. You can see there in the background a couple of Hondas closing in on this fight. A little bit of contact as Harrison gets himself back involved, gets himself past the RHG Esports man of Mandanak, and as they head out onto NASCAR 1 and 2 for the penultimate time, there's only going to be a couple more opportunities for them to make these moves. And realistically, again, I think this is SimRC trying to drag RHG out of that fight for the race win to remove any hope of it.
Yeah, we'll see what happens here as they work in towards the bus stop. Harrison going to let off. BMW Team Redline, by the way, get in front of BS Turner. We are on to the final lap of the race. The Apex Racing Team duo at the front of GTD already about to finish up the infield, power out of turn 6, and run around 2.5 miles of banking here at the Daytona International Speedway. But as the touring car trio at the front get ready to hit one more lap to go, the reality is fireworks are on cue and ready to go off.
Yeah, and we're going to see I'm glad that they're not also too close to those GTD leaders, because I want to see how this race is going to end, and we're going to get perfect footage of how these 3 are going to cross the line. It's been a super fight thus far, and the final run around this circuit begins for them heading into the bus stop, though. Apex in GTD have been absolutely perfect all season long.
We'll track this battle, of course. It's going to be the drag to the line out of that bus stop / Le Mans chicane, but it's a look of focus right now, but in about 20 seconds time, it's going to be replaced with a look of elation. 4 wins in 4 races for the Apex Racing team. 1 and 2 in the final 2 rounds of the championship, and a dominant year capped off as the inaugural winners of the 2022 IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship. A look over at the teammate, a bump of the fist, and the recognition that the hard work for the year has been done, and Kevin Ellis Jr. can now enjoy the rest of 2022 as the inaugural IMSA Esports winner.
Yes, indeed. The hard work's been done from them, but for their teammates, the hard work is just beginning, because the 199 hangs on to the race lead. They're heading through NASCAR 2 now up towards the bus stop. There is 100% going to be a drag race here.
And let's not forget, RHG are under investigation for a handful of incidents, Lewis, so this may not be done on track. There may be more drama in the steward's room. Bit of a bobble there for RHG. Here's the run out of the bus stop.
Yes, good drive there from Harrison. Not so great, but look at that. Straight up to the high side. You can see the Apex Racing team car just getting up. Guile Valero trying to break the slipstream, comes back down right ahead of Mandak. It's going to be a drag race to the line.
Kyle Valero, the orchestrator of chaos. Will we see 3 wide, or is SimRC content to ride as they are? It's been an electric season for the touring cars, and they'll bump doors all the way to the line. Kyle Valero, by the narrowest of margin, will claim the victory in a photo finish at the World Center of Racing, but ultimately the plaudits will go to SimRC, Kieran Harrison, and Corentin Gunes, who bided their time, had to manage the chaos at Daytona, and now can breathe and relax. Finally, the champions.
Yeah, you saw, I mean, when they had the choice as to who to give the bump draft to, it wasn't the car that was going fast, it's the car that they might have followed into second spot. It was a massive slam to the back of Kyle Valero to push the 199 to victory here in the final round of the season. A super effort from them, but you got to say, for Harrison and for Corentin Gunes, they had to deal with a lot of pressure through that race, and I'm sure the heart rates were through the absolute roof when they were having that side-by-side racing with Valentin Mandlak sending it one down the inside. I'm going to say, I know they're under investigation twice. I do genuinely think the two things that I could recall as what they might have been reported for, I don't necessarily think will result in penalties. But again, it might be something that we haven't seen.
Yes, let's see exactly how it plays out. Race control will hopefully have not too much to review at the end of this race. We'll wait for confirmation from them, hopefully, that things are, well, officially official. What a way to close out this season. Delighted to have had John Hindorf to join us for a vast majority of the race, scheduled for 10 or 15 minutes, but John is a racing fan through and through, and it should show just how significant it is that IMSA has joined the esports world and sim racers have been crowned as champions. Let's run you down through your race results. 2 photo finishes, one closer than the other, but it's the close one that isn't the one that we were worried about. Kevin Ellis Jr. finishes in front of Jamie Fluke with a margin 200 at the line. 1 and 2 in the championship, 1 and 2 to close out the season as well. Patrick Holtzman does get in front of the Phil Dinez-driven BS Turner machine at the end of the day. The tires maybe just giving up the ghost for Dinez in the closing stages. The 71 grabbing the 3rd step of the podium. Tumas Tatala for Team 77. It's been a tough couple of weeks, but a top 5 in their Ferrari. A lot to be happy with in that result. Alejandro Rui Sanchez in MSI Esports Porsche works his way forward up into 6th spot at the end of the day after being marred down in the top 15 midway through the race. BMW BS competition, Team 75, Williams Esports Razor, and then the Mercedes AMG Urano entries bookend the top 10 with Luis Nager, Daniel Ferguson, Yannick Lapchan, as well as Antti Ahola and then Yannis Albert, all finishing on the lead lap. There were plenty of retirements, but many that finished 1 lap down, including Christophe Herbigno in the hardpoint by Delta Sport number 99, Maniti Racing 17th in their Lamborghini. Aspar, Urano Esports Data Group, and CrowdStrike will round out our top 20. Just 4 more finishers in the form of Door Esports, Carbon Sim Sports, and the 2 Monaco Esports Ferraris. While Gianni Vecchio quite frustrated with the incident on pit lane, and maybe rightfully so as well. 25th at the end of the season for them in this race, with Triton, Bila, Altus, and Arnage rounding out the 29 that took to the green flag. A quick look over at the touring cars, and 3 cars split by a 1/10 of a second at the line. Maybe not the 3-wide photo finish that Kyle Valero promised us, but the conductor of chaos was able to come across the line in front of Valentin Mandlak after a shove from Kieran Harrison. SimRC walk away the champions. Pure Sims in 4th with RHG and Semper Racing. The rest of those that finish on the lead lap with CrowdStrike, Core Sim Racing, and Arnage 7th through 9th. In front of Carl Whitmer in the official Honda Racing HPD entry. And then Gergo Baldi 3 laps down for him. Not going to be too impressed, I think, with the end result, but late notice replacement driver. At least there are points there. Full Send and Impulse are 3 retirements on the field here today. We'll give a couple of moments for the drivers to come and join us. I already see that we have Kevin Ellis Jr. and Alejandro Sanchez standing by, so I tell you what, let's not hang around too long, Lewis. You're standing by with our championship winners.
Yeah, what a season it was for the pair of you. Absolutely incredible. I'll go to Kevin Ellis Jr. first. Crossing the line there. Obviously a bit of side-by-side with your teammate. I mean, the entire day, you were just out front. I mean, is that the perfect sign-off to a championship?
I mean, I think so, yeah. We didn't expect it to go the way it did. We were sort of preparing for quite a hectic first stint, as you know, Daytona normally does produce that. but yeah, we got quite lucky. I think it was Reiner had a bit of a mistake in the bus stop, and it left the guys behind about a second, which is right on the edge of draft. And we just got hooked up. You know, we've been practicing bum drafting all week. We knew it was going to be quick. And yeah, I think that's definitely what saved our race today.
Now, through some of the strategy that we were seeing being run later on in the race, you ended up having to make a couple of overtakes, of course, to come through on the BS Turner and the BMW Team Redline car. Was there any stress when you realised they were 5 seconds clear and they'd done something slightly different on strategy, or was that kind of expected and you were pretty calm in the car?
No, I mean, we were pretty calm. You know, with how the sim's working at the minute, there's a tyre bug whenever you try and take over someone's old tyres, so we just didn't even bother trying it. It wasn't even worth risking the championship to get in the car and be randomly 1 second a lap slower, which it seemed happened to those guys. So yeah, we weren't interested in experiencing any bugs, so we just took tyres and took it calm and brought it home.
Now over to your teammate Alejandro Sanchez. I don't know if you're doing any more races in the next month or so, but what a way to either way round out your year with Apex. It's been a fantastic year, Alejandro. Talk us through like some of your highlights. I'm surely this has got to be very high up there.
Yeah, really happy. One of the best decisions I've made was to join the team at the beginning of the year, and definitely one of the highs, along with winning a round of PESC. And many other races like BMW and stuff. But yeah, really happy. I think we deserve it. We put a lot of effort into this and a lot of hours, a lot of sacrifices to get where we are now. And yeah, of course, big thank you to the team, to my teammates. Literally couldn't have done it without Johan this race bumping me. We understood each other pretty well. I was backing it off corners where I needed to be pushed, just so we got hooked a bit sooner. And yeah, we took full advantage of the bump drafting, and I think we made the most out of it, definitely. And it's not my last race of the year. I still have some left, sadly. But yeah, it's what I enjoy doing, so it is what it is.
Yeah, whilst your teammate will be off to have a little bit of a breather, you've still got plenty of work ahead of you. But talk us through how much work that went through to learn the bump drafting that perfectly. We were having a little bit of a chat with Johan Arthur earlier on about how basically you got it nailed, so you're 3 or 4 tenths faster than pretty much anyone else that can do it. I mean, it looked absolutely locked together. That surely takes an awful lot of work in practice to get it down perfectly.
They didn't really take us that long to understand it. To understand that you needed to back off the exit of the corner to, be efficient. Like, we just threw up a hoster and tested it and figured out what worked and what not. It's a bit counterintuitive because you have to be slow to be fast, but I think we figured it out pretty quickly and pretty well, I'd say.
Well, massive congratulations to our GTD champions here in the IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship. Super stuff between the pair of them. Love it.
And now we switch on over straight to our touring car champions. I can't imagine how the nerves are going if you're Corentin Younes or Kieran Harrison, but Kieran, let's start with you. What was going through your mind in those final 20 minutes as the contact began to pick up and the RG-Bargy started to dominate the course of the race?
Yeah, it was quite scary, to be honest. I knew what they were up to. They were trying to slow us down as much as possible, because if we finished P3, I think we were safe regardless on points. So they needed the pack behind with the Pure Sim and the other RAG car to get involved. So I was quite happy in the end for Apex to lead, because that meant that RAG had to chase and they couldn't use any of their tactics while that was happening. But yeah, overwhelming emotion at the line. It's just relief, because it was a pretty dodgy final stint.
I can only imagine. I mean, in terms of the year as well for you, working along with Corentin across a couple of teams and across multiple championships, I think it's fair to say that with this win, you probably have a resume to put forward along with Corentin as the two best drivers that touring car has to offer now in iRacing.
Yeah, it's been a really good year for us. It's really good that we can move team together as well and continue winning things together. But yeah, awesome year for us. The only thing I think we didn't manage to win was the first season of WTCS. As Corentin just missed out on at the end, but yeah, really good way to end the year for us.
That's why they're the ones that are driving and we're the ones that are commentating. They're thinking about the ones that they didn't win. We're thinking about the ones that they did win. Let's talk to Corentin Younes. What was going through your mind, Corentin, as you're just sitting there and watching? You have no control over the car itself, and all you can do is trust your teammate. What do you even do as you sit and you wait to see exactly what's going to happen?
I was just stressed and eating my nails like for 1 hour and 40 minutes. So yeah, I just tried to give some information to Kieran to see how to maybe help him to manage the race. But yeah, I think that was a good strategy. I knew like before the race that Kieran had to finish the race because I knew that we had this kind of end as a possibility. So I'm happy that he ended the race, because if it was me, I think it would have been a bit more difficult. But yeah, just very stressful. I guess it was even more for him. But yeah, just happy that we got this.
As you look forward now to next year, of course, you guys have now established yourself as part of SimRC. What's the goals that you have moving forward into a new year after such a successful 2022?
Yeah, we'll see what's gonna happen. Yeah, we'll see what one championship we do. I think we've done a lot of TCR so far. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe I want to do some GT at some point as well. So we'll see. But of course, we will, I guess, keep a foot into the TCR for sure, because we're quite successful with this car. So yeah, hopefully we can keep getting victories and championship with this car.
Thanks for joining us, Corentin and Kieran, winners in our championship for the 2022 IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship. I do want to talk to our other winners very briefly, so let's drag on in the Apex Racing 199, Nicole Foggy and Gael Valero, who are chatting away there. Let's talk first with Nicole, and let's talk about the start of the race. Putting it on pole, and it's a big contrast, Nicole, to how things started the season off when you missed qualifying.
Yes, I did not forget. I actually had a distraction, which I had to spend the time not qualifying and taking care of the distraction, so I'll say that.
I do want to ask as well, for your perspective racing in virtual reality, I mentioned this earlier, you're not the only top-level touring car driver that Apex has had that's raced in virtual reality. Stelin Chepelevsky is the other name that strikes out to me, but how do you enjoy being able to look around as you got cars swarming all around you?
Well, I'll tell you, it was horrible there, especially with the TCR, the speed difference between the TCRs and the GT3s, and just, you know, the TCRs stay close, and then suddenly the GT3s are on top of you, and you've got to make quick decisions. Sometimes mine weren't so quick, but VR certainly helped with that.
Let's head on over to the Apple man, Mr. Gael Valero. Gael, you were trying to conduct some chaos there at the end. I heard you were also live commentating what was going on.
Oh, that was wonderful. We didn't know where we would end up at the end of the final stint for the pit stop, so we kept it as far as we can, and everyone behind us saved a lot of fuel. I thought at this point they were running on hope, not on fuel. And yeah, we managed to be in this position and to make the most of it. So
I'm just saying, with your way with words, we might have the newest member of the RaceBot TV team here. Lorenzo Bonda was very impressed by your commentary. In terms of that run to the line as well, did you want to be the car leading out of the bus stop? Because we kind of thought you wanted to be second and try and draft your way to the line.
So the original strategy, as soon we got out of the pit, was just to stay in that top 3, because obviously the championship wasn't relevant with the two cars next to us. So I was just worried a bit about Ross McFarlane and Pure Sims guys catching up with all this fighting in front. And at this point, it was just being in the right place at the right time. We got a nice bump from SimRC. I guess they made the right decision for this championship, so good position, good place, good time.
And a good win indeed. Congratulations, Nicole and Gael, to win the final race of the 2022 IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship. That wraps up our post-race interviews, and I guess it's time for us to begin drawing things to a close. I hope we have a look at the unofficial championship standings, of course, with the results still yet to be confirmed by Race Control, but I guess it's unofficially official. The 98 are your champions after winning 3 races this year and being on the podium in every single one of them, Lewis.
Yeah, it's been a truly incredible performance from the Apex Racing team. Like I said, they've really pushed that Porsche as far as it'll go, as fast as it'll go, and they have been incredible. Got to say for BS Taylor, though, for the most part, flying under the radar is probably the right way of putting it, but just being super consistent enough to tick off a third place finish, being an outside, well, being really in the hunt for second spot and almost being a kind of outside chance for the title, but it was never really going to happen just because of Apex Racing Team's consistency. An incredible season. And like you said, seen a lot of highs, a lot of lows. Most of those highs generally have come from the Apex Racing Team, but still there's been plenty of others. And unfortunately for Team Redline, not too many for them. The highest placed car, 9th spot. This has been a dismal season for the massive brand, one that everyone knows as being one of the strongest teams in sim racing.
They came into this 11th and 12th in points, so at least the BMW Team Redline was able to work for tonight. Team 7 did lose out. They were 5th coming into the final race of the championship, 7th at the very end. Let's talk about touring cars very quickly then. Let's run you down through the points here. It's not 1 point that will split SimRC and RAG courtesy of the Apex Racing Team victory. The Bumblebees with two of the 4 victories this season do indeed provisionally walk away the champions. Look how close it was, by the way, between the 116 and the 188, Lewis. That was a battle that we saw coming on track until the checkered flag on the race. And if that had swapped around, RAG would have grabbed 4th in the very dying stages.
Yeah, I mean, it is how it goes. By the way, we will say the RAG car receiving a 5-second time penalty, we believe. So it might even drop some more points. It'll drop behind the Apex Racing, behind the SimRC car, rather. Obviously, they were already behind the Apex Racing Team car. So it's not going to drop them down the championship, but it's just, again, a bit more of a slap on the wrist. It will just grow that points gap out from 31 even further. But you can't fault SimRC. They have put on a brilliant run throughout the season. The consistency, the only real fault that they had was back in round 2 of the championship, which was at Laguna Seca, where they received a penalty post-race, where they dropped down the order a few positions more than they wanted, but then they had wins in the other 2. And this one, of course, not coming up shy of it by too much. It's been an incredible performance.
Yeah, the penalty you refer to was for entering a closed pit lane. Who knows if there will be more drama to talk about. We will, of course, encourage you to head to social media, twitter.com/VCO Esports. You can keep up to date with the latest championship standings as soon as they are finalized. Lewis, it's been a year in the making, but what a 6 weeks we've had. Crazy racing, joined today, of course, by John Heindorf as well. And I think the thing is, you have seen a lot of things across the sim racing world, across the sim racing platforms. This was a lot of fun, even for as short a time as it was.
Yeah, maybe a bit too short of a time. I think when we do this one again, we need to see a few more rounds. We need to see this lasting a bit longer. We need to see a bit more spice. But, you know, the same level of spice. I'll take that. We've had some incredibly spicy racing out there. It's been incredible to be alongside you in the commentary. There you go, almost a compliment there.
Oh, wow.
But no, it's been great fun. Absolutely adored this championship. It's, sometimes you kind of think, sometimes these things are better to be left quite short because then you'll be desperate for more in future, and maybe that is the case, but I'm desperate for more in future.
And I'm hoping that maybe next time we have the LMDHs in the GTP Evolution to come and add to the GTDs. What a 4 rounds it's been, but all good things must come to an end. It's time to bid farewell. On behalf of everyone behind the scenes, our incredibly hardworking team at VCO, working alongside with those at IMSA, at iRacing, at P1 Gaming to put everything on. For our team at RaceSpot, behind the scenes, Tyler Maxon, Hugo Luis, Ewan O'Leary, Lorenzo Bonder, DJ Clark, Lewis McLean, and myself, Arjuna Kangipati. We've enjoyed your company across of RaceSpot TV and the iRacing Esports Network, and what a 4 rounds it was. Don't forget, 69 days from today, it's time to go back to the World Center of Racing. It's time to get the GTP era underway. The 24 hours of Daytona. All that action live on IMSA Radio. We'll see you next time, though, here in the world of sim racing. It's Apex Racing Team and SimRC, your 2022 IMSA Esports Michelin Global Champions.